The moment Evan Brooks pulled over on that rain-soaked Oregon highway, he had no idea he was staring at his future. A nurse clutching her infant daughter, mascara streaking down her face, standing in the downpour with nowhere to go. This wasn't just another stranger in need. This was Claire Thompson, the woman who would shatter every wall he'd built around his broken heart. But before love, before healing, before hope, there was only rain, desperation, and 6 words that would change everything. I don't have anywhere to go. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The rain came down like judgment that Tuesday night in Portland, Oregon, the kind of rain that didn't just fall but attacked, turning the world into a blur of gray and cold. Evan Brooks hunched over the steering wheel of his 10-year-old Honda Civic, squinting through windshield wipers that squeaked their protest with every pass. His back ached from 14 hours on his feet at the warehouse, his hands were raw from lifting boxes, and his mind was already running through the evening's checklist. Pick up Noah from Mrs. Henderson's, heat up whatever leftovers were hiding in the back of the fridge, help with homework, bedtime story, collapse. The same routine he'd been running for 3 years straight. The same empty routine. His headlights caught something at the bus stop ahead. 2 figures huddled against the plexiglass shelter that did absolutely nothing to keep out this kind of rain. Evan's first instinct was to look away. Portland was full of people caught in bad weather, waiting for buses that never seemed to come. It wasn't his problem. He had his own kid to worry about, his own life barely held together with duct tape and determination. But something made him slow down. Maybe it was the way the smaller figure moved, the unmistakable shape of someone holding an infant, that protective curve of a parent's body shielding their child from the world. Maybe it was muscle memory from all those nights 3 years ago when he'd been the one standing in metaphorical rain, drowning in grief with a 7-year-old son who kept asking when mommy was coming home. Evan pulled over before his brain could talk him out of it. Through the passenger window, he could see her more clearly now. A woman in navy blue scrubs soaked through completely, her dark hair plastered to her face. She was rocking back and forth, and even through the rain and glass, Evan could see her shoulders shaking. The baby in her arms was wrapped in what looked like a jacket. Her jacket, he realized, because she was standing there in just her scrubs, giving her child the only protection she had left to give. He rolled down the window. Rain immediately spattered the passenger seat. "Hey!" he called out. "Do you need help?" The woman's head snapped up, and Evan felt something twist in his chest. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying, and held a kind of desperation he recognized too well, the look of someone who'd already fallen off the edge and was just waiting to hit bottom. Her voice cracked. She looked down at the baby, then back at him, then at the empty street behind him as if calculating whether this stranger was a risk worth taking. "I don't know where to go." "Where are you trying to get to?" Evan asked, already unlocking the passenger door. "I can give you a ride." She didn't move, just stood there in the rain, shaking her head slowly. "There's nowhere to go. I don't have—" Her breath hitched, and she pressed her face against the baby's head for a moment, composing herself. When she looked back up, her eyes were hollow. "We don't have anywhere to go." The words hit Evan like a physical blow, not "I'm waiting for someone," or "I missed my bus," or any of the normal reasons someone might be stranded. This was something else entirely. This was free fall. "Get in the car," he said, and this time it wasn't a question. She hesitated for one more moment, a moment where Evan could see her weighing her options, calculating the dangers of a strange man in a beat-up car against the certain danger of spending the night on the streets with an infant. Then the baby made a small, distressed sound, and the calculation was over. She hurried around to the passenger side, moving with the careful, exhausted movements of someone who'd been running on empty for too long. She slid into the seat, bringing with her the smell of rain and antiseptic and something else, the acrid scent of fear. "Thank you," she whispered, adjusting the baby in her arms. The infant couldn't have been more than 6 months old, her tiny face scrunched up and red from crying. "Thank you so much." Evan cranked up the heat and pulled back onto the street, his mind racing. He should probably take her to a shelter. That was the logical thing to do. But it was almost 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and every shelter in Portland would be full by now. He knew that from the stories he'd heard at work, from the news, from living in this city long enough to understand how thin the safety net really was. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm, unthreatening. "Claire." She was looking straight ahead, not at him, as if making eye contact would break whatever fragile composure she had left. "Claire Thompson, and this is Lila." "I'm Evan Brooks." He turned onto a side street, buying himself time to think. "Claire, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you running from someone? Abusive husband, boyfriend, anything like that?" She shook her head quickly. "No, nothing like that. She laughed, a bitter sound that was closer to a sob. "I wish it were that simple. At least then I could go to the police, right? No, I lost my job 3 weeks ago. Hospital buyout. They kept the senior nurses, let everyone with less than 5 years go, and my savings were already gone from—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Medical bills. Lila has asthma, bad asthma. 3 ER visits in 4 months, and my insurance wasn't worth the paper it was printed on." Evan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "So you got evicted?" "Last week. I stayed with a friend for a few days, but she's got her own problems. 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment, boyfriend who came back and didn't want us there. I've been trying to find work, but without an address, without childcare." She broke off again, and when she continued, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I went to 3 shelters today. They're all full. One said maybe they'd have space in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? What am I supposed to do for 2 weeks?" The baby, Lila, started to fuss, a thin, exhausted crying that spoke of hunger and cold, and too many hours of stress transmitted from mother to child. Claire immediately started rocking her, making soft shushing sounds, but her own hands were trembling so hard that the comfort she was trying to offer seemed impossible. Evan made a decision. "My house is about 15 minutes from here," he said. "I have a spare room. You and Lila can stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps." Claire's head whipped toward him. "What? No, I can't. I don't even know you. You don't know me. I could be—" "You're a mother who stood in the rain to keep her baby dry," Evan interrupted. "That tells me everything I need to know." He glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "Look, I'm a single dad myself. My son Noah is 7. My wife died 3 years ago, cancer, and I spent a long time after that feeling like I was drowning. I know what it's like to need help and not know where to find it. So yeah, you can absolutely say no if this feels weird or dangerous. I'll take you wherever you want to go, but if you need a safe place for the night, I'm offering." Silence filled the car except for Lila's quiet whimpering and the steady drum of rain on the roof. Evan could feel Claire studying him, trying to read him, trying to decide if this was salvation or another disaster waiting to happen. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would you do this?" Evan was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. "Because 3 years ago, when my wife was in the hospital and I was trying to take care of a 4-year-old and work and keep our house and not fall apart, a stranger at the grocery store saw me having a breakdown in the cereal aisle. I was just staring at the boxes, couldn't remember what Noah liked, couldn't remember why anything mattered. And this woman, I never even got her name, she helped me shop, she talked to me, she treated me like a human being instead of a mess. She didn't save my life or anything dramatic like that, but she reminded me that there were still people who gave a damn." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm just trying to pass that forward." He could see Claire's expression softening in his peripheral vision, the rigid tension in her shoulders easing just slightly. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, just for tonight." "Just for tonight," Evan agreed, though something in his gut told him this was going to be more complicated than one night. They drove in silence for a while, winding through the wet streets of Portland. The city looked different in the rain, softer somehow, all the hard edges blurred and running together. Evan's mind was already racing ahead, cataloging what he'd need to do. The spare room was full of boxes and old furniture, but there was a bed under there somewhere, clean sheets in the hallway closet. He'd need to pick up Noah soon, needed to figure out how to explain this to a 7-year-old in a way that wouldn't scare him. "Can I ask you something?" Claire's voice pulled him back to the present. "Sure." "Your wife. How long did it take before it stopped feeling like drowning? Evan thought about lying, about offering some comforting platitude, but something about the raw honesty of the night demanded truth. It still feels like drowning sometimes, he admitted, but the spaces between the drowning get longer. You start to remember how to breathe again, and then one day you realize you've been breathing normal for a week straight, and that feels like a miracle. He paused. I'm not going to tell you it gets easier, but it gets different, manageable. Claire nodded, looking down at Lila, who had finally quieted down and was staring up at her mother with those wide, trusting eyes that infants have. The kind of trust that assumes the world will take care of them, because it always has. I'm supposed to be the one taking care of her, Claire said so quietly Evan almost didn't hear. I'm a nurse. I'm supposed to know how to handle emergencies, how to keep people safe, and I can't even keep a roof over my daughter's head. Stop. The word came out harder than Evan intended, and he immediately softened his tone. Sorry, but stop. You're standing in the rain to keep your kid dry. You're going to job interviews with an infant on your hip. You're doing everything possible. Sometimes everything possible isn't enough, and that's not because you failed, it's because the system did. Easy for you to say, Claire replied, but there was no heat in it, just exhaustion. Yeah, it is easy for me to say, because I'm 3 years past my crisis and hindsight is 20/20. Evan turned onto his street, a quiet residential area where the houses were small but well kept, where the yards had toys scattered across them and basketball hoops hung over garage doors. But I remember what it felt like in the moment. I remember thinking I was the worst father in the world because I couldn't keep it together, because I served Noah cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row, because I forgot to sign his permission slip and he missed a field trip. All these little failures that felt enormous at the time. And now? Now I know that showing up counts for something. Even when you're barely holding it together, showing up is half the battle. He pulled into his driveway, a modest 2-story house with faded blue siding and a porch that desperately needed new paint. The yard was overgrown, one more item on the infinite to-do list he never seemed to make progress on, and there was a broken skateboard leaning against the front steps. It wasn't much, but it was home. This is it, Evan said, cutting the engine. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry. Claire stared at the house like it was a mirage, something that might disappear if she looked away. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Just come inside before we both catch pneumonia. They made a run for the front door. Claire hunched over Lila to protect her from the worst of the rain. Evan fumbled with his keys. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline of the past 30 minutes finally catching up with him, and then they were inside, dripping on the hardwood floor of the entryway. The house was dark, except for the kitchen light Evan always left on. He flipped on the living room lamp, revealing the organized chaos of a single father's home. Toys scattered across the floor, a pile of laundry on the couch that he'd meant to fold 3 days ago, dishes in the sink, backpack and school papers on the dining table. Not dirty exactly, but definitely lived in. Sorry about the mess, Evan said automatically. I wasn't exactly expecting company. It's perfect, Claire said, and she sounded like she meant it. She was still holding Lila, still standing in the entryway as if she wasn't quite sure she was allowed to go further. Come on, let me show you the spare room. You can get Lila dried off and settled. Evan led the way upstairs, acutely aware of every creaky board, every scuff mark on the walls. The spare room was at the end of the hall, and when he opened the door, he was relieved to see it was less of a disaster than he'd remembered. The bed was actually visible under just a few boxes, and the window had curtains that worked. I'll get those boxes out of here, he said, already moving them to the hallway. There are clean sheets in the closet right there. Bathroom's the next door down. Towels are in the cabinet under the sink. Claire walked slowly into the room, looking around like she couldn't quite believe it was real. She set Lila down on the bed carefully, and the baby immediately started to fuss again, her tiny face crumpling. She's hungry, Claire said, her voice thick with exhaustion and something that might have been shame. I ran out of formula this afternoon. I thought I'd figure something out. I've got formula, Evan said quickly. Noah's way past that stage. But Mrs. Henderson, the woman who watches him after school, she has a granddaughter who visits sometimes. She gave me some emergency supplies to keep here just in case. Hold on. He jogged back downstairs, his mind cataloging everything he'd need. Formula, bottles, something for Claire to eat. When was the last time she'd eaten? And he needed to call Mrs. Henderson to let her know he'd be late picking up Noah. In the kitchen, he found the formula in the back of the pantry, exactly where Mrs. Henderson had stashed it 6 months ago. He grabbed a bottle from the cabinet where he kept all the random baby supplies that occasionally came in handy, filled it with water from the tap, and measured out the powder. While the bottle warmed in a bowl of hot water, he pulled out his phone and dialed Mrs. Henderson. She picked up on the second ring. "Evan? Everything okay?" "Yeah, sort of. Long story, but I've got an emergency situation here. Is it okay if Noah stays with you for another hour or so? I'll come get him as soon as I can." "Of course, honey. He's fine here. He and my grandson are building some elaborate Lego castle. Take your time." Mrs. Henderson paused. "You sure everything's okay? You sound stressed." "I am stressed, but it's going to be fine. I'll explain later. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. Go handle your emergency." Evan hung up and grabbed the bottle, testing the temperature on his wrist, a motion that came back automatically even though it had been years since Noah needed it. Then he raided the fridge, pulling out leftover chicken, some vegetables, bread for sandwiches. His own stomach was growling, and he doubted Claire had eaten recently either. When he got back upstairs, Claire was sitting on the edge of the bed, rocking Lila and crying quietly. The sight made Evan's chest tighten, but he kept his voice calm and steady. "Hey, got the formula, and I'm making food downstairs in a few minutes. When's the last time you ate?" Claire looked up, wiping her eyes quickly. "I don't remember. Yesterday, maybe? I'm sorry, I'm not usually like this. I don't fall apart. I don't cry in strangers' houses." "You're not in a stranger's house," Evan said gently, handing her the bottle. "You're in my house, and crying is allowed here. Actually, it's practically mandatory some days." Claire took the bottle with shaking hands and offered it to Lila, who latched on immediately and started drinking with the desperate intensity of a very hungry baby. The relief on Claire's face was almost painful to watch. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't just mean for the formula, I mean for all of this. For stopping. For bringing us here. For not treating me like a failure." Evan sat down in the old desk chair in the corner, giving her space but staying close enough to talk. "You're not a failure. You're a person caught in a bad situation. There's a difference." "Is there?" Claire's laugh was hollow. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels the same." "I get that. I really do." Evan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "When my wife Sarah was dying, I felt like I was failing every single day. Failing her because I couldn't save her. Failing Noah because I was too wrapped up in my grief to be the dad he needed. Failing at work because I couldn't concentrate. Failing at basic things like remembering to pay the electric bill or buy groceries. And then after she died, it got worse. I'd forget to pick Noah up from school. I'd go to work wearing 2 different shoes. I once got pulled over because I ran a red light, didn't even see it. I was just driving on autopilot, thinking about nothing and everything at the same time." Claire was watching him now, really watching him, and Lila was drinking her bottle with her eyes half closed in contentment. "What changed?" Claire asked. "Nothing. And everything." Evan shrugged. "There was no magic moment where everything got better. I just started having more okay days than bad days. I found a rhythm. Noah and I figured out how to be a family of 2 instead of 3. I stopped comparing myself to the dad I was when Sarah was alive and started trying to be the dad Noah needed in this new reality, and I let people help me. That was the hardest part, admitting I couldn't do it alone." "I don't have people," Claire said quietly. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 20. I have a sister in Florida, but we haven't talked in years. Bad falling out over something stupid. And friends," she paused. "Everyone has their own problems. I can't keep asking for help." "Why not?" "Because eventually they get tired of you. Eventually you become the friend who's always in crisis, always needing something. And then you're not a friend anymore. You're a burden." Evan thought about that for a moment. Maybe. Or maybe the people who get tired weren't really your people to begin with. Real friends, real community. They stick around for the hard stuff. "That's a nice thought," Claire said, and she didn't sound convinced. They sat in silence for a while, watching Lila finish her bottle. The baby's eyes were fully closed now, her tiny body finally relaxing into sleep after what had probably been a terrifying, exhausting day. "I should let you rest," Evan said, standing up. "I'm going to go pick up my son and make some food. Do you want me to bring you something up here, or do you think you can come downstairs?" "I'll come down," Claire said quickly. "If that's okay. I don't want to hide up here like some kind of charity case." "You're not a charity case. You're a guest." Evan moved toward the door, then paused. "And Claire, tomorrow we'll figure out a plan. Job applications, childcare resources, whatever you need. But tonight, just rest. You're safe here." Her eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded. "Okay. Thank you. Really, thank you." Evan headed back downstairs, his mind spinning. What the hell had he just done? He'd brought home a complete stranger and her infant daughter. He was going to have to explain this to Noah. Mrs. Henderson would probably have questions. And beyond tonight, what then? He couldn't just kick them out tomorrow, but he also couldn't take on the responsibility of 2 more people when he was barely managing his own life. One step at a time, he told himself. One step at a time. He was pulling together ingredients for sandwiches when he heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, having changed out of her wet scrubs into, he realized with a start, they were Sarah's old clothes. He must have left them in the spare room closet, forgotten remnants of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. "I hope it's okay," Claire said, gesturing to the sweatpants and t-shirt she was wearing. "They were in the closet. I can change back if—" "No, it's fine," Evan said quickly, pushing down the sudden wave of emotion. "They were my wife's. I should probably donate them anyway." "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Don't be sorry. She would have wanted them to be useful." And surprisingly, that was true. Sarah had always been practical, always the first to help someone in need. She would have done exactly what Evan was doing tonight, probably would have done it faster and better. "Let me help," Claire said, moving into the kitchen. "Please, I need to do something with my hands." They worked in comfortable silence, assembling sandwiches and heating up leftovers. Evan set the table, something he rarely did, usually just eating standing up at the counter or in front of the TV. But tonight felt different, like it deserved more attention. "I should go get Noah," he said, glancing at the clock. "He's at the neighbor's. I'll be back in 5 minutes." "Noah?" Claire repeated. "You said he's 7? "Yeah, good kid. Obsessed with dinosaurs and Lego and asking approximately 10,000 questions per day." Evan smiled despite everything. "He's going to be curious about you. Fair warning." "I'm good with kids," Claire assured him. "Occupational hazard." Evan grabbed his jacket and headed out into the rain, which had finally lessened to a steady drizzle. Mrs. Henderson's house was 3 doors down, a warm beacon of light in the dark street. He rang the doorbell and waited, trying to figure out exactly what he was going to say. Mrs. Henderson answered with Noah hovering behind her, backpack already on his shoulders. "There you are! Noah's been waiting patiently." She gave Evan a meaningful look that said they'd be having a longer conversation later. "Thanks again, Mrs. Henderson. I really appreciate it." Evan ruffled Noah's hair. "Hey, bud. Ready to go home?" "Dad, me and Jacob built this awesome castle, and it has a working drawbridge, and—" Noah was already launching into the detailed explanation that Evan knew would last all the way home. "That's great, Noah. Tell me all about it." He guided his son toward the door, then turned back to Mrs. Henderson. "I'll explain everything tomorrow. I promise." "You better," she said, but her eyes were kind. "And Evan, whatever you're dealing with, you know I'm here if you need anything." "I know. Thank you." The walk home was filled with Noah's enthusiastic description of the castle, the drawbridge, the Lego knights, and the elaborate battle scene they'd created. Evan let the chatter wash over him, grateful for the normalcy of it, the reminder that his first responsibility was still to this energetic 7-year-old who trusted him completely. They were almost at the front door when Noah suddenly stopped. "Dad, why is there a light on in the spare room?" Evan took a breath. "Because we have guests, buddy. A woman named Claire and her baby daughter, Lila. They needed a place to stay tonight, so I told them they could stay with us." Noah's eyes went wide. "A baby? Like a real baby. Yes, a real baby. About 6 months old. Cool. Noah was already pushing past him toward the door. Can I see her? Does she cry a lot? Does she eat real food or just bottles? Cameron at school has a baby sister and she screams all the time. And Noah, slow down. Evan caught his son's shoulder gently. Listen to me for a second. Claire and Lila have had a really hard day. They're going to be tired and maybe a little scared because they don't know us yet. So I need you to be on your best behavior, okay? That means inside voice, gentle movements, and if they need space, we give them space. Can you do that? Noah nodded solemnly, his face taking on the serious expression he used when Evan gave him important responsibilities. I can do that. I'll be super quiet and super gentle. That's my guy. They went inside to find Claire in the kitchen, putting food on plates. She looked up when they entered, and Evan saw her expression shift from nervous to cautiously friendly. You must be Noah, she said. Your dad told me about you. I'm Claire. Noah stared at her for a moment, taking in the sight of a stranger in his kitchen. Then, with the blunt curiosity of a 7-year-old, he asked, Why do you need to stay at our house? Noah, Evan started, but Claire held up a hand. It's okay. She knelt down to Noah's level. That's a good question. My daughter and I needed a safe place to stay, and your dad was kind enough to help us. We're really grateful to be here. Where's your daughter now? Upstairs sleeping. She's just a baby, so she sleeps a lot. Can I see her tomorrow? If it's okay with your dad, sure. Noah looked at Evan, who nodded. Then Noah turned back to Claire. Okay. Do you like Lego? Because I have a really cool castle design I can show you. And just like that, the tension broke. Claire laughed, a real laugh this time, not the brittle sound from earlier. I like Lego a lot, actually. Cool. Dad, can we show her after dinner? Maybe tomorrow, buddy. It's already past your bedtime. Noah groaned but didn't argue, which told Evan exactly how tired his son was. They sat down to eat, an odd little group around Evan's kitchen table. Noah chattered about school and castles and dinosaurs, filling the awkward silences with the easy enthusiasm of childhood. Claire responded to his questions and comments with the practiced patience of someone who worked with people for a living, and Evan watched both of them, marveling at how quickly the strange had become almost normal. After dinner, Noah started to fade fast, yawning between sentences. Evan sent him upstairs to brush his teeth and get ready for bed, then turned to Claire. Thank you for being patient with him. He doesn't have a filter yet. He's sweet, Claire said, helping him clear the table. You've done a good job with him. I'm figuring it out as I go. Evan loaded plates into the dishwasher. Listen, about tomorrow. I'll be gone first thing, Claire said quickly. I don't want to impose more than... That's not what I was going to say. Evan turned to face her. I was going to say that tomorrow we should sit down and make a real plan. Not just for the next day or two, but for the next few weeks. You need time to find a job, find childcare, get back on your feet. That's not going to happen overnight. Claire's expression was unreadable. Evan, I can't ask you to eat. You're not asking, I'm offering. And before you argue, think about Lila. Think about what's best for her. It was a low blow, and Evan knew it. But it was also the truth. Claire's face cycled through a dozen emotions, pride, shame, gratitude, fear, before finally settling on reluctant acceptance. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, but I'm paying you back. Somehow. I don't know how yet, but I will. We'll figure it out. Evan heard Noah calling from upstairs. I need to go do bedtime, make yourself at home. Watch TV, take a shower, whatever you need. I left some extra toiletries in the bathroom. Thank you, Claire said for what felt like the 100th time. Stop thanking me and just breathe, Evan replied, heading for the stairs. Bedtime with Noah was the usual routine. Brush teeth, put on pajamas, pick out a book. Tonight Noah chose a dinosaur encyclopedia, and Evan read about velociraptors and triceratops in a low, soothing voice, while his son fought to keep his eyes open. Dad? Noah murmured, just as Evan was about to turn off the light. Yeah, buddy. Is Claire going to be sad like you were sad after Mom died? The question hit Evan hard, a reminder that kids saw more than adults gave them credit for. Maybe. She's going through a really hard time right now. Should we be extra nice to her? Yes, We should be extra nice to her. Okay. Noah yawned hugely. I like her. She has a nice smile. She does have a nice smile. Now go to sleep. Love you, Dad. Love you too, Noah. Evan stood in the hallway for a moment after closing Noah's door, gathering himself. When he went back downstairs, he found Claire sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she must have made. He's a good kid, she said without looking up. You should be proud. I am. Evan sat down in the armchair across from her. Claire, I know tonight has been overwhelming, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She looked up, wary. Okay. Are you safe? I mean, beyond the immediate housing and job situation. Is there anyone who might come looking for you? Anyone who might cause problems? No, I promise. Lila's father has been out of the picture since I was 5 months pregnant. He wanted me to get an abortion. I said no. He left. I don't even know where he is now, and I'm not running from anything illegal or dangerous. She shook her head. I'm just someone who fell through the cracks. Evan believed her. He'd gotten good at reading people after years in warehouse management, and everything about Claire screamed genuine exhaustion and fear, not deception. Okay, then here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow I'm taking a personal day from work. We're going to sit down and make a plan. Job applications, resume updates, childcare options, whatever you need. I have some connections in the medical field. Nothing big, but maybe enough to get your resume in front of the right people. And you and Lila can stay here while you get things sorted out. Evan, that's too much. I can't. Yes, you can, and you will, because the alternative is going back out there with nowhere to go and a 6-month-old baby. He softened his tone. Look, I'm not doing this to be a hero or because I think you owe me something. I'm doing it because 3 years ago I needed help and people gave it to me. I'm doing it because if our situations were reversed, I'd want someone to help Noah. And I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. So please, just accept the help. Claire's eyes filled with tears again. Evan was starting to think she must be completely dehydrated from all the crying, but she nodded. Okay, yes, thank you. They talked for a while longer, trading bits of their stories. Evan learned that Claire had been a nurse for 6 years, that she specialized in pediatrics, that she'd loved her job before the hospital buyout gutted her department. He learned that Lila's asthma had started at 4 months, that the medical bills had piled up faster than Claire could manage, that she'd been one paycheck away from disaster when that paycheck got taken away. In return, Evan told her about Sarah, about the 2-year battle with breast cancer that they'd thought they were winning until they weren't, about the confusion and grief of those first months after her death, about learning to be both mother and father to a traumatized 5-year-old, about the slow, painful process of building a new life from the rubble of the old one. How do you do it? Claire asked. How do you keep going when everything feels impossible? Evan thought about it. You just do, because what's the alternative? I had Noah depending on me. I couldn't fall apart completely, so I fell apart in pieces and put myself back together in between. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And eventually the pieces started fitting together better. I'm scared, Claire admitted. I'm so scared I'm going to screw this up, that I'm going to fail Lila. You won't. You know how I know? Because you're here. Because you stood in the rain to keep your daughter dry. Because you're fighting. That's what matters. It was well past midnight when they finally called it a night. Evan showed Claire where everything was one more time, made sure she had what she needed, then headed to his own room. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. What had he just done? Invited a stranger and her baby to live in his house? Made promises he might not be able to keep? And yet, despite the chaos and uncertainty, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt useful, needed, like he was doing something that mattered. Sarah would have approved. That thought settled something in his chest, eased the guilt he always felt when he thought about moving on, about opening his life to someone new. She would have brought Claire and Lila home in a heartbeat. She would have been making plans already, pulling strings, finding solutions. Maybe Evan couldn't do it as smoothly as Sarah would have, but he could do it, one day at a time. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, filling the gutters, feeding the earth. And inside a modest house in Portland, 4 people slept under one roof, connected not by blood or history, but by circumstance and the simple human instinct to help when help was needed. Tomorrow would bring complications and questions and the hard work of building something stable from this fragile beginning. But tonight, they were safe. They were dry. They were fed. And sometimes, Evan thought as he finally drifted off to sleep, sometimes that had to be enough. Morning came too early, filtering through the curtains in shades of gray that matched the lingering clouds outside. Evan woke to the sound of a baby crying, a sound that jolted him upright in bed, heart pounding before his brain caught up with reality. Not Noah. Lila. Claire was here. Last night had actually happened. He checked his phone. 6:15. He'd slept maybe 4 hours, his mind churning through scenarios and plans until well past 2 in the morning. But there was no time to ease into the day. He could hear movement upstairs, footsteps pacing back and forth, Claire's soft voice trying to soothe her daughter. Evan pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt and headed downstairs, putting on coffee and pulling out ingredients for breakfast. Pancakes, he decided. Noah loved pancakes, and they felt like the kind of comfort food this strange morning needed. He was mixing batter when Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, Lila on her hip, both of them looking exhausted. "I'm so sorry," Claire said immediately. "I tried to keep her quiet, but she's hungry, and I didn't want to just raid your kitchen without asking and—" "Claire, stop!" Evan poured her a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. "This is your kitchen too, at least for now. You don't need permission to feed your daughter. Formula's in the pantry, bottles are clean in the dish drainer. Help yourself." She looked at him for a moment like she didn't quite believe him, then nodded and went to prepare Lila's bottle. Evan returned to his pancakes, the kitchen filling with the comfortable sounds of breakfast being made, the sizzle of batter on the griddle, the soft sucking noises of a baby drinking, the gurgle of the coffee maker finishing its cycle. "Did you sleep at all?" Evan asked, flipping a pancake. "A little, maybe 2 hours total." Claire was sitting at the kitchen table now, supporting Lila while she ate. "Every time I started to drift off, I'd wake up panicking, thinking we were still at the bus stop, or that this was a dream, and I'd wake up back in reality. It's not a dream, and you're not at the bus stop." Evan plated the first batch of pancakes and brought them to the table along with syrup and butter. "Eat. You need your strength if we're going to tackle today." Claire ate mechanically, like someone who'd forgotten what hunger felt like. Lila finished her bottle and immediately wanted attention, making small cooing sounds and reaching for her mother's face. Despite the exhaustion, Claire smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her features. "She's always happiest right after eating," Claire said, bouncing Lila gently. "The rest of the time she's either crying because she's hungry or crying because her stomach hurts from the asthma medication. But those 10 minutes after a bottle? She's perfect." Noah was like that too. Sarah used to call it his golden window. Evan sat down with his own plate, memories washing over him. We'd try to get all the diaper changes and outfit changes done during that window because we knew it wouldn't last. How old was he when she died? 4. Just turned 5 a month later. Evan took a sip of coffee. Old enough to understand something terrible had happened, too young to really process what death meant. He kept asking when Mommy was coming home from the hospital. It took months before he stopped setting a place for her at dinner. Claire's expression was pained. That must have been unbearable. It was. But you know what? Kids are resilient in ways adults aren't. Noah cried, he grieved, he had nightmares for a year. But he also kept living, kept playing, kept laughing, kept being a kid. He taught me that you can hold grief and joy at the same time, that one doesn't cancel out the other. Before Claire could respond, they heard footsteps thundering down the stairs. Noah burst into the kitchen, already talking before he'd fully entered the room. "Dad, I had this dream about dinosaurs, and they were—" He stopped short, seeing Claire and Lila at the table. His eyes went wide. "Oh, you're still here!" "Good morning to you too, buddy," Evan said, amused. "Yes, Claire and Lila are still here. Come eat your pancakes." Noah approached the table slowly, his attention fixed on Lila. "She's really small." "She's 6 months old," Claire said. "You were that small once, too." "Really?" Noah looked skeptical. "I don't remember being small." "That's because you were a baby. Babies don't remember anything." Evan set a plate in front of his son. "Eat your breakfast and stop staring. It's rude." I'm not staring, I'm observing. Miss Jenkins says observing is what scientists do. But Noah dug into his pancakes, casting frequent glances at Lila between bites. They ate in a silence that wasn't quite comfortable, but wasn't hostile either, just the awkwardness of people learning to share space. Lila started fussing again, and Claire immediately stood, walking around the kitchen and bouncing the baby gently. Does she cry a lot? Noah asked, syrup on his chin. Noah, Evan warned. No, it's okay, Claire said. Yes, she cries more than most babies. She has asthma, which means sometimes it's hard for her to breathe, and that makes her uncomfortable. That sounds scary. It is scary sometimes, but we're managing. Noah considered this, his 7-year-old brain working through the information. My friend Marcus has asthma. He has an inhaler he uses before gym class. Does Lila have an inhaler? Not yet. She's too young. She has medicine we give her through a nebulizer machine. Claire's expression clouded. Or she did. I had to leave it behind when... She stopped, swallowing hard. Evan stood up. What kind of nebulizer? Maybe we can get a replacement. You can't just get a replacement, Claire said, her voice tight. They cost hundreds of dollars, and I'd need a prescription, and I don't have a doctor here yet because I haven't had time to... She broke off, breathing hard, Lila picking up on her mother's stress and starting to wail. Okay, breathe, Evan said calmly. We'll figure it out. One problem at a time, remember? First, let's get Noah to school. School! Noah's eyes went wide. Dad, I forgot. We have our dinosaur presentations today. I need my poster. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Finding Noah's poster board, making sure he had his lunch and homework, getting him dressed and teeth brushed. Evan was herding his son toward the door when Noah suddenly turned back. Claire, will you and Lila be here when I get home? Claire looked at Evan uncertainly. Evan answered for her. Yes, they'll be here. Good, Noah beamed. I want to show you my dinosaur collection. I have 27 dinosaurs. Well, 26 because one of the velociraptors lost its head, but I'm counting it anyway. I'd love to see them, Claire said, and she sounded like she meant it. Evan dropped Noah at school, exchanging pleasantries with the other parents while his mind raced ahead to everything that needed to happen today. When he got back to the house, he found Claire in the living room, Lila finally asleep in her arms, staring at the wall with an expression of absolute exhaustion. All right, Evan said, sitting down across from her. Let's make a plan. But first you need to sleep. You're running on fumes. I can't sleep. I need to... There's so much to do. And you can't do any of it if you collapse from exhaustion. Come on, I'll take Lila. You go upstairs and sleep for a few hours. You can't just take the day off work to babysit my daughter. I already called in. Told them I had a family emergency. Evan held out his arms for Lila. And I'm not babysitting. I'm helping. There's a difference. Claire hesitated, then carefully transferred the sleeping baby into Evan's arms. Lila stirred but didn't wake, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. Claire watched them for a moment, her expression unreadable. I don't know how to accept this much help, she admitted quietly. I'm not used to it. I wasn't either. Sarah had to literally force me to let people help after she died. She'd made these arrangements before. His voice caught. Before the end. Had people signed up to bring meals, to watch Noah, to help with the house. And I was so angry about it at first. Felt like charity, like pity. But then I realized she was still taking care of us, even after she was gone. She was teaching me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Again, always again, and she nodded. Okay, I'll try to sleep, just an hour. 3 hours minimum. I'll wake you if Lila needs you. She went upstairs and Evan heard the spare room door close. He looked down at the baby in his arms, this tiny human who'd crashed into his life less than 12 hours ago. Lila's mouth was moving in her sleep, probably dreaming about milk. Her fingers were curled into small fists, her breathing steady and even. For a moment, Evan was transported back 7 years holding newborn Noah for the first time, terrified and amazed in equal measure. Sarah beside him in the hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, telling him, "You're going to be an amazing father." He'd believed her then. Wasn't sure he believed it now, most days. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson. Everything okay? Saw you had Claire's car in the driveway all night. Evan smiled despite himself. Nothing happened on this street without Mrs. Henderson noticing. He typed back with one hand, the other supporting Lila. Long story, we'll explain later. Everything's fine, promise. Her response came immediately. I'll bring dinner over tonight, no arguments. That was Mrs. Henderson, always helping, always showing up. She'd been a lifeline after Sarah died, the kind of neighbor who just appeared with casseroles and offers to watch Noah without being asked. Evan made a mental note to figure out how to properly thank her someday. Lila slept for another hour before waking with a whimper that quickly escalated to a full cry. Evan warmed a bottle, the motion already becoming familiar again, and fed her while pacing the living room the way he'd done countless times with Noah. It was amazing how quickly the muscle memory came back. He was burping Lila when his phone rang. The warehouse, probably wondering when he'd be back. But the caller ID showed a different number, one he recognized from the hospital where Sarah had spent her final weeks. Hello? Mr. Brooks? This is Jennifer Chen from the cardiac unit at Mercy Hospital.
I know this is out of the blue, but I heard through the grapevine that you might be helping a nurse who's looking for work. Evan's mind raced. How did you... Mrs. Henderson called me this morning, said you had someone staying with you who needed connections in the medical field. I'm not usually one for gossip, but Gladys Henderson doesn't call unless it's important. Of course, Mrs. Henderson had already started making calls. Evan felt a rush of gratitude so strong it almost knocked him over. Her name is Claire Thompson, pediatric nurse, 6 years experience. She was at Portland General until the buyout last month. I remember that buyout. We scooped up some of their staff. What's her specialty? Pediatrics, but I think she's pretty flexible at this point. She's got a 6-month-old daughter and she needs something with regular hours if possible. There was a pause on the other end. We just lost one of our PEDS nurses to a family relocation. Position's been open for 2 weeks. The pay isn't great and the hours can be rough, but it's full-time with benefits. Think she'd be interested? Yes, Evan said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. When can she come in for an interview? How about Monday? We're short-staffed, so if her credentials check out, we could probably fast-track the whole thing. Monday's perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. I mean it. Thank you for being there for Sarah. I remember you, the husband who never left her side. We don't forget the good ones. Evan's throat tightened. I appreciate that. He hung up and just stood there for a moment, Lila dozing against his shoulder. Less than 24 hours since he'd picked up Claire in the rain, and already things were moving. It felt like the universe aligning, like maybe sometimes things actually did work out. He heard footsteps on the stairs. Claire appeared, looking slightly more rested but still wary, like she expected everything to have disappeared while she slept. She okay? Claire asked, reaching for Lila. She's perfect. Ate about 30 minutes ago. Evan handed over the baby and watched Claire's shoulders relax as soon as her daughter was back in her arms. And I have news. A friend from Mercy Hospital called. They have an opening in their pediatrics unit. Interviews Monday, if you want it. Claire stared at him. What? How did you... Monday is 3 days away. I don't even have interview clothes or a current resume or... We'll handle all of that today, right now. Evan was already moving toward the stairs. I have Sarah's old laptop. We'll update your resume, maybe create a portfolio if you have any certifications or special training, and clothes. He paused, thinking. Sarah was about your size. There are some of her professional clothes still in the closet upstairs. You could wear those. Evan, I can't wear your dead wife's clothes to a job interview. That's practical, Evan interrupted firmly. That's practical. And Sarah would have insisted. She was a doctor. You're a nurse. She'd have wanted her clothes going to someone who'd actually use them for something important. Claire looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Finally, she just nodded. Okay, thank you, but I'm paying you back for all of this. We'll keep a tab, Evan said, already heading to dig out the laptop. Right now, let's just focus on getting you that job. They spent the rest of the morning at the kitchen table, Evan's laptop between them, building Claire's resume from scratch. She'd had one, she explained, but it had been on a phone she'd lost 2 weeks ago when it died, and she couldn't afford to replace it. Everything, contacts, photos, documents, just gone.
Tell me about your experience, Evan said, fingers poised over the keyboard. Start with your first nursing job and work forward. Claire shifted Lila to her other hip and began talking. She'd started at a small clinic in Beaverton right out of nursing school, moved to Portland General after 2 years, specialized in pediatrics because she'd always loved working with kids. She'd handled everything from routine checkups to emergency situations, had certifications in pediatric advanced life support and neonatal resuscitation, had even been nominated for some kind of excellence award her 3rd year. Why did you go into nursing? Evan asked, typing rapidly. My mom was a nurse. She worked nights at the county hospital, came home exhausted every morning, but she loved it. She used to tell me that nursing was about seeing people at their most vulnerable and choosing to be kind. That stuck with me. Claire's voice went soft. After she died, it felt like the best way to honor her, to keep doing the work she loved. Evan looked up from the keyboard. That's beautiful. And we should include that in your cover letter. Not the tragedy part, but the why. Employers want to know you're passionate, not just looking for a paycheck. They worked through lunch, ordering pizza because neither of them had the energy to cook. Lila was getting fussy again, the kind of fussy that Claire explained meant her chest was getting tight. She needed the nebulizer treatment she couldn't provide. We'll figure out the medical stuff tomorrow, Evan said, watching Claire try to soothe her increasingly agitated daughter. For now, just focus on getting through today. But it was clear Lila was struggling. Her breathing was audible now, a slight wheeze that made Evan's chest tighten in sympathy. Claire was trying to hide her panic, but he could see it in the way her hands shook, the way she kept checking Lila's color, the way her own breathing had gone shallow and fast. Is she okay? Evan asked carefully. Do we need to go to the ER? No, not yet. It's not that bad yet. But Claire didn't sound convinced. The nebulizer would help. Without it, I just have to wait and hope it doesn't get worse. What about a pharmacy? Can they provide emergency supplies or something? Not without a prescription. And I can't get a prescription without a doctor. And I can't get a doctor without insurance. And I can't get insurance without a job. The hopelessness in Claire's voice was crushing. It's an impossible loop. Evan made a decision. Give me 10 minutes. He went into the other room and called Jennifer Chen back. Hey, it's Evan Brooks again. I have a weird question. Do you have any contacts for pediatric pulmonologists? Claire's daughter has asthma and she needs a nebulizer, but the whole insurance prescription situation is a nightmare. Oh boy, yeah, that is a nightmare. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, thinking. Tell you what, let me make some calls. We have a few doctors who do charity cases or can fast-track emergency situations. Give me her information and I'll see what I can do. Evan provided everything Claire had told him about Lila's condition, thanked Jennifer profusely, and went back to the kitchen. Claire was walking in circles, bouncing Lila, singing softly under her breath. The baby's breathing still sounded labored. I called my contact at the hospital, Evan said. She's going to try to get you connected with a doctor who can help. Evan, you can't just... You've already done so much. Stop. Seriously, just stop. He moved closer, lowering his voice so it wouldn't upset Lila. I know you're used to handling everything alone. I know accepting help feels wrong, but your daughter needs medical care and you need support, and I can provide both. So let me. Claire's eyes searched his face, looking for something, pity, maybe, or judgment, or some hidden agenda. Whatever she was looking for, she didn't seem to find it. Her shoulders sagged in defeat or relief. Evan couldn't tell which. Okay, she whispered. Okay. His phone rang an hour later. Jennifer had worked a miracle. Found a pediatric pulmonologist willing to see Lila that afternoon. No insurance needed. Sliding scale payment. The doctor had a cancellation at 4 o'clock if they could make it. They could make it. Evan drove while Claire sat in the back with Lila. The baby's breathing getting progressively worse. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching Claire's face cycle through fear and guilt and barely controlled panic. He wanted to say something comforting, but what? Everything would be fine? He didn't know that. It would work out? That felt hollow. So instead he just drove, getting them there as fast as he legally could, and when they pulled into the medical building parking lot, he helped Claire out of the car and carried the diaper bag because her hands were full of Lila. Dr. Patricia Morrison was exactly the kind of doctor Evan would have wanted for Noah. Warm, competent, efficient. She took one look at Lila and immediately started an examination, asking Claire questions in a calm, measured tone that somehow managed to be both clinical and kind. How long has she been wheezing like this? About 3 hours. It's been getting progressively worse. Previous diagnosis of asthma? Yes, at 4 months. She's been on albuterol sulfate and we were using a nebulizer twice daily, but Claire's voice cracked. I don't have access to it right now. Dr. Morrison didn't ask why, just nodded and continued her examination. We're going to do a nebulizer treatment right now, get her breathing stabilized. Then we'll talk about long-term management. The relief on Claire's face was almost painful to witness. Dr. Morrison set up the nebulizer, a portable unit much smaller than Evan expected, and fitted the tiny mask over Lila's face. The baby fussed at first, but within minutes her breathing started to ease. Claire sagged against the examination table, finally letting herself breathe too. She's going to be fine, Dr. Morrison said, making notes on her tablet. This was a moderate episode, not severe, but you're right that she needs regular treatments. I'm going to write you a prescription for a home nebulizer unit, plus her medication. There's a program through the hospital that can help with costs, not free, but manageable. And Claire? She looked up, her expression serious. You need to have an emergency plan. Asthma can escalate fast in infants. You need access to her medication at all times. I know, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know. I'm trying. They spent another 30 minutes with Dr. Morrison, going over treatment plans and emergency protocols and follow-up appointments. When they finally left, Evan carrying a prescription and several pages of instructions, Lila was breathing normally and Claire looked like she'd been through a war. I can't afford this, Claire said in the car, staring at the prescription. Even with the hospital program, I can't. We'll figure it out, Evan said. The interview on Monday could change everything. And in the meantime, we make it work. Why are you doing this? The question came out raw, exhausted. You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me. Evan pulled out of the parking lot, considering his answer carefully. When Sarah was dying, there was this nurse, Marcus, I think his name was. He worked the night shift and he'd come check on Sarah even when she wasn't technically his patient. One night I was having a breakdown in the hallway, trying to be quiet so Noah wouldn't hear me on the phone, and Marcus just sat with me. Didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it. Just sat there for 20 minutes until I could breathe again. He glanced at Claire. Later, I tried to thank him, and you know what he said? He said, we're all just people trying to get through the hard stuff. Sometimes you help, sometimes you get helped. It all balances out eventually. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Did it balance out? I don't know yet. Ask me in a few years. They stopped at the pharmacy to fill the prescription, and Evan firmly handed over his credit card before Claire could object. $347 later, they had a nebulizer and a month's supply of medication. Claire looked sick watching the transaction, but Evan just shrugged. Add it to the tab, he said, and carried everything back to the car. When they got home, Noah was already there. Mrs. Henderson had picked him up from school and brought him home, bless her. She was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself, acting like this was completely normal. There you are, she called out when they came in. I'm making lasagna, and before you argue, Evan Brooks, I'm making enough for an army, so you better accept it gracefully. Yes, ma'am, Evan said, grinning despite everything. Noah came barreling down the stairs, skidding to a stop when he saw Lila. Is she okay? She looks sick. She's better now, Claire said. She just had trouble breathing for a while. Like Marcus at school. He uses his inhaler, and then he's fine. Noah moved closer, studying Lila with that intense focus kids bring to everything. Can I hold her? Claire hesitated, then looked at Evan. He nodded. Go sit on the couch, and we'll let you try. 5 minutes later, Noah was sitting very still and very seriously on the couch, Lila propped carefully in his lap under Claire's watchful eye. The baby stared up at Noah with wide, curious eyes, and Noah stared back like he'd been entrusted with the world's most precious treasure. She's really light, Noah observed, and she smells weird, but good weird. That's baby smell, Claire said, smiling. Powder and lotion and milk. Dad, when I was a baby, did I smell weird? The weirdest, Evan confirmed.
You also spit up constantly. Claire, be glad Lila seems to have a stronger stomach. They all laughed, and for a moment, just a moment, everything felt normal. Like they were a family who'd always been together, sharing dinner preparations and baby duties and easy conversation. Mrs. Henderson caught Evan's eye from the kitchen and winked, and he knew she was thinking the same thing. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Noah talking nonstop about his dinosaur presentation, Mrs. Henderson telling stories about the neighborhood drama, Claire slowly relaxing enough to join the conversation. Lila sat in an improvised high chair made of pillows and couch cushions, gumming a teething ring and watching everything with wide eyes. After dinner, Mrs. Henderson pulled Evan aside. That girl's had it rough. Yeah, I'm trying to help. I know you are, and I'm proud of you for it. She patted his arm. But be careful, honey. I see the way you look at her. Mrs. Henderson, I'm not judging. Lord knows you deserve some happiness. Just be careful. She's vulnerable. You're her rescuer. Those lines can get blurry fast. Evan knew she was right. He'd been thinking the same thing himself, late at night when he couldn't sleep. But what was he supposed to do? Turn them away? I'm just helping her get back on her feet. That's all. Mrs. Henderson didn't sound convinced. Well, you know where to find me if you need anything, and I'll be by tomorrow with breakfast supplies. You're out of eggs. After she left, Evan helped Claire set up the nebulizer in the spare room, showing her where he'd cleared space in the bathroom for Lila's supplies. They did Lila's evening treatment together, Evan holding the squirming baby while Claire administered the medication with practiced efficiency. You're good at this, Claire observed. The whole dad thing. I fake it mostly, but thanks. He adjusted his grip as Lila tried to grab the nebulizer mask. You're pretty good at the mom thing too, despite what you seem to think. I don't feel good at it. I feel like I'm failing constantly. Welcome to parenthood. That's basically the whole job description. Claire laughed, a real genuine laugh that transformed her whole face. Evan found himself staring, then deliberately looked away. Mrs. Henderson's warning was echoing in his head. Later, after Noah was in bed and Claire had disappeared upstairs with Lila, Evan sat alone in the living room with a beer he wasn't really drinking. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than usual. Not empty, just peaceful. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson. Monday is 3 days away. Don't do anything stupid before then. He smiled and typed back, define stupid. You know exactly what I mean, Evan Brooks. He did know. He was already starting to care more than he should, to think about things like what happened after Monday, after Claire got the job, after she was back on her feet. Would she leave? Move into her own place? And why did that thought make his chest feel tight? Sarah had been gone for 3 years. 3 years of grief and healing and learning to be whole again. He'd dated a few times, awkward dinners that went nowhere, women who were nice but wrong. He'd convinced himself he was fine alone, that he didn't need or want anyone else. But sitting here in his quiet house with Claire and Lila asleep upstairs, Noah dreaming about dinosaurs down the hall, he realized he'd been lying to himself. He wasn't fine alone. He was just existing. There was a difference. He heard footsteps on the stairs. Claire appeared, wrapped in one of Sarah's old robes, looking uncertain. Can't sleep? Evan asked. No, too much in my head. She sat down on the other end of the couch, tucking her feet under her. I keep thinking about Monday. What if I don't get the job? What if they think I've been out of work too long, or my references don't check out, or... You'll get it, Evan said with more confidence than he felt. Jennifer wouldn't have set up the interview if she didn't think you had a real shot. And if I do get it, then what? I still don't have anywhere to live, don't have money for deposits and last month's rent. I'm still basically starting from zero. So you stay here until you can afford your own place. The words came out before Evan had fully thought them through, but once they were out there, he realized he meant them. It's not charity, Claire, it's just logistics. You need time to get established. This gives you that time. Claire was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. I don't understand you. How can you just invite a stranger to live in your house? What if I'm secretly crazy? What if I steal all your stuff and disappear? Are you secretly crazy? No?
Are you planning to steal my stuff? Of course not. Then I guess we're fine. Evan finished his beer and set the bottle on the coffee table. Look, I'm not a saint and this isn't some grand gesture. I have space. You need space. Noah likes having you here. And honestly, having people in the house again feels good. It's been too quiet for too long. You're grieving, Claire said softly. You shouldn't make big decisions while you're grieving. I've been grieving for 3 years. If I waited until I was done, I'd never make any decisions at all. He met her eyes. I'm not asking you to stay forever. I'm just asking you to stay until you're ready to leave. There's a difference.
Claire pulled the robe tighter around herself, thinking, if I stay, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, I'd need to contribute. Help with bills, do housework, something. I can't just be a charity case. You're a nurse with a 6-month-old. Trust me, you'll be contributing plenty just by being here. Noah already loves having another kid in the house, even if Lila can't actually play yet. And having another adult to talk to at the end of the day, that's worth more than you know. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable silence that should have been impossible between two people who barely knew each other. Outside, the rain had started again, a soft pattering against the windows that made the house feel even cozier. Okay, Claire finally said. Okay, until I can afford my own place, but we're keeping a tab and I'm paying you back. Every cent. Deal. Evan held out his hand, and after a moment, Claire shook it. Her hand was small and warm in his, and he held it a second longer than necessary before letting go. She stood up, heading back toward the stairs. At the bottom step, she turned back. Evan, thank you for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it every time. I know you do. Now go get some sleep. Monday's coming whether we're ready or not. After she went upstairs, Evan sat alone for a while longer, listening to the rain and the quiet settling of the house around him. 3 days until the interview. 3 days to help Claire prepare, to keep Lila healthy, to maintain the fragile balance they'd created. 3 days until everything changed again. He finished his beer, turned off the lights, and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications. But tonight, everyone under his roof was safe, warm, and fed. And really, Evan thought as he finally drifted off to sleep, what more could anyone ask for than that? The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and unexpected domesticity. Saturday morning found Evan and Claire at the kitchen table again, this time practicing interview questions while Noah entertained Lila with an elaborate puppet show using stuffed dinosaurs. The baby's delighted squeals provided a soundtrack to their work, and more than once Evan lost his train of thought, watching Claire's face soften when she looked at her daughter. Tell me about a time you had to handle a difficult patient, Evan said, reading from a list of common interview questions he'd found online. Claire thought for a moment. There was a 12-year-old boy, Marcus, who came in with a broken arm, skateboarding accident. But he was terrified of needles, absolutely panicking at the thought of an IV for pain medication. His parents were getting frustrated, the doctors were getting impatient, and Marcus was working himself into a full anxiety attack. What did you do? I sat down with him, ignored everyone else in the room, and asked him about skateboarding. Got him talking about tricks and his favorite skate park and this YouTube channel he followed, kept him distracted while I prepped the IV site, kept talking while I inserted it. He didn't even realize I'd done it until it was over. She smiled at the memory. His mom cried and hugged me, said nobody else had even tried to connect with him. They just wanted to get it done. That's perfect, Evan said, making notes. That shows empathy, problem solving, ability to work under pressure. Use that example. They worked through question after question, Evan pushing her to articulate things she did instinctively, to put words to the intuitive care that made her good at her job. Claire grew more confident with each answer, her posture straightening, her voice getting stronger. You're going to crush this interview, Evan said finally, closing the laptop. Jennifer's going to wonder why you were ever unemployed in the first place. Don't jinx it, Claire said, but she was smiling. A real smile that reached her eyes, transforming her whole face in a way that made Evan's heart do something complicated in his chest. Noah chose that moment to crash into the table, breathless with excitement. Dad, Claire! Lila laughed, like a real laugh. Come see. They spent the next hour on the floor of the living room, taking turns making silly faces and sounds, to coax more laughter from Lila. The baby obliged, her giggles bright and pure, and Noah took credit for being the funniest person in the house. Claire recorded videos on Evan's phone, her own laughter mixing with her daughter's in a way that felt like healing, like maybe the worst was actually behind them. Mrs. Henderson stopped by around lunch with enough food for a week, as promised. She didn't stay long, but managed to pull Evan aside in the kitchen while Claire was upstairs changing Lila. "She looks better," Mrs. Henderson observed, loading casseroles into the refrigerator. "Not so much like a ghost." "She's getting there. Interview's Monday." "I heard. Jennifer called me this morning, wanted to know more about Claire's background." Mrs. Henderson gave him a knowing look. "I may have sung her praises, might have embellished slightly about how well she's fitting into the neighborhood." "Mrs. Henderson, you barely know her." "I know people, Evan Brooks. Known them for 73 years, and that girl's got a good heart. She's just been kicked around by life." She closed the refrigerator and turned to face him fully. "Question is, what are you going to do when she doesn't need rescuing anymore?" The question hit harder than Evan expected. "What do you mean?" "I mean she's vulnerable now, grateful. Easy to mistake gratitude for something else. But when she's back on her feet, has her own job and her own place, when she's not dependent on you anymore, what then? You still going to feel the same way about her?" "I don't feel any particular way about her," Evan lied, not very convincingly. "Sure you don't. And I'm the Queen of England." Mrs. Henderson patted his cheek with surprising gentleness. "Just be careful, honey. With her heart and yours, you're both too fragile for careless handling." After she left, Evan stood in the kitchen trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in his chest. Was he just being helpful, or was this something more? And if it was something more, was that wrong? Claire needed stability, not some widower projecting his loneliness onto her situation. But then Claire came downstairs with Lila, and she was wearing one of Sarah's old sweaters, blue cashmere that Sarah had loved, that Evan hadn't been able to look at for 3 years without his throat closing up. On Claire it looked different, not like a ghost, but like a second life. And when she caught him staring, she did a little self-conscious turn. "Is this okay? It was in the closet and I got cold. I can change if—" "It's perfect," Evan said, and meant it. "It looks good on you." Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of something neither was ready to name. Then Noah came thundering through demanding lunch, and the moment passed, but it left something behind. A possibility, a question waiting to be answered. Sunday was quieter, a day for rest and last-minute preparation. Claire tried on 3 different outfits for the interview, modeling each one for Evan and Noah like they were fashion consultants. Noah voted for the blue dress because blue is the best color, while Evan advocated for the gray pantsuit that made her look professional and confident. She settled on the pantsuit with a blue scarf as a compromise, and Noah declared it a victory. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Evan found Claire on the back porch despite the cold. She was holding Lila, bundled in blankets, staring at the dark yard with an expression he couldn't read. "You okay?" he asked, stepping outside and closing the door softly behind him. "Just thinking about tomorrow, about everything." She glanced at him. "What if this doesn't work? What if I get the job and then mess it up somehow? What if—" "Stop," Evan interrupted gently. "You can what if yourself into paralysis. I should know. I did it for months after Sarah died. What if I'd caught the cancer earlier? What if we'd tried different treatments? What if... It doesn't change anything. It just makes you crazy." Claire was quiet for a moment, rocking Lila in that automatic way mothers do. "How did you stop?" "I didn't, really. I just learned to quiet the voice down, to focus on what I could control instead of what I couldn't." He leaned against the porch railing, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You can't control whether they hire you, but you can control how prepared you are, how you present yourself, how you answer their questions. Focus on that." "Is that what you do? Focus on what you can control?" "Every single day. Some days it works better than others." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars try to break through Portland's perpetual cloud cover. Lila dozed between them, peaceful and warm. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked, and a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the yard before moving on. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said finally. "Sure."
Do you ever feel guilty for being happy again? The question pierced straight through him. Every day. Every single day. How do you live with it? Evan thought about all the easy answers he could give, the platitudes about moving on and honoring Sarah's memory. But Claire deserved better than platitudes. I don't know that you ever really live with it. You just learn to carry it differently. At first, the guilt was this huge, suffocating thing that filled every moment. I'd catch myself laughing at something Noah said and immediately feel terrible, like I was betraying Sarah by not being miserable. But then I realized, and this took a long time, that Sarah didn't die so I could be miserable forever. She died because cancer is cruel and random and unfair. And if I spent the rest of my life drowning in guilt, that wouldn't honor her. It would just mean cancer took both of us instead of just her. Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I feel guilty for losing my apartment, for not being able to provide for Lila the way I should, for needing help, for being here in your house wearing your wife's clothes and using your resources. I feel guilty all the time. I know, but guilt is just fear wearing a different mask. You're afraid of being a burden, afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough. And I get that. But Claire? He waited until she looked at him. You're doing everything you can. That's all anyone can ever do. The rest is just circumstances and luck and timing. You really believe that? I'm trying to. He smiled slightly. Some days I believe it more than others. Today's a good day. They went back inside when Lila started fussing from the cold. Evan made hot chocolate while Claire settled the baby for the night, and when she came back downstairs, they sat at the kitchen table talking about nothing important. Favorite movies, worst jobs, embarrassing childhood stories. The kind of conversation that's really about getting to know each other, about building bridges between two lives that had been separate 48 hours ago. Around midnight, Claire finally stood to go to bed. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, turning back with an expression that was half hope, half fear.
Thank you, she said quietly, not just for the practical stuff, but for treating me like a person. Not a charity case, not a project, just a person. You are just a person, Evan said. A person going through a hard time, that doesn't define you. I needed to hear that. She started up the stairs, then paused again. Evan, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know this has already changed my life. You've already changed my life. Even if everything falls apart, I won't forget that. She disappeared upstairs before he could respond, leaving him alone in the kitchen with the echo of her words and the uncomfortable realization that she'd already changed his life too. Monday morning arrived with weak sunshine and nervous energy. Claire was up before dawn, going through her interview notes one more time while Lila slept. Evan found her at the kitchen table, still in pajamas, her hair unbrushed and her eyes wide with anxiety. You look like you're going to throw up, he observed. I feel like I'm going to throw up. What if I freeze? What if I forget everything we practiced? What if you're amazing and they hire you on the spot? Evan poured her coffee and sat down across from her. Claire, you've got this. You're a fantastic nurse with great experience and solid references. The job is already halfway yours. You can't know that. You're right, but I can know that you're prepared, that you're qualified, and that you're going to walk in there and show them exactly why they should hire you. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. Breathe. You've survived worse than a job interview. She laughed shakily. That's true. Okay, breathing. I can do breathing. The morning passed in controlled chaos, getting Noah ready for school, feeding Lila, helping Claire with her hair and makeup. Noah insisted on being part of the preparation process, offering his 7-year-old wisdom on what Claire should say. Tell them you're really smart and good at your job, he advised seriously, and that you know all about babies because you have one, and that you're living with us and we're really nice, so that means you're nice too. That's excellent advice, Noah, Claire said, her smile genuine now. I'll definitely mention all of that. But maybe not the part about living with us, so Evan added quietly after Noah had run off to find his backpack. That might require more explanation than we want to get into. Right. Good point. Claire looked down at herself in the gray pantsuit with Noah's blue scarf. Do I look professional? You look perfect. And she did. Nervous but composed, scared but determined. Evan felt a swell of pride that had no logical basis. She wasn't his to be proud of, wasn't his responsibility or his accomplishment.
But he felt it anyway, fierce and unexpected. Mrs. Henderson appeared right on schedule to watch Lila during the interview. She swept into the house like a force of nature, already cooing at the baby and shooing Claire toward the door. "Go on, you'll be late. Lila and I are going to have a wonderful time. I've got picture books and that toy piano Evans had in storage. We'll be fine." "Her nebulizer treatment is at 11, Claire said, her mother worry kicking in. "And she likes her bottle warmed but not too hot. And if she gets fussy, the pacifier is in the diaper bag, but she doesn't always take it. And Claire," Mrs. Henderson interrupted gently, "I've raised 3 children and 7 grandchildren. I think I can handle one 6-month-old for a few hours. Now go before I physically push you out the door." Evan drove Claire to the hospital, filling the silence with casual conversation about nothing important, trying to keep her nerves from spiraling. She was quiet, her hands twisting together in her lap, her breathing too fast and too shallow. "Hey," he said as they pulled into the parking lot. "Look at me." She turned, her eyes wide and frightened. "You've got this. You're Claire Thompson, and you're a damn good nurse who's had some bad luck. That's all. You walk in there with your head up, and you show them why they'd be crazy not to hire you. Can you do that?" "I can do that," she said, though her voice shook. "Say it like you mean it. I can do that. Stronger this time. One more time. I can do that." And this time she smiled, a flicker of confidence breaking through the fear. Evan walked her to the entrance, then stopped before the doors. "I'll be right here when you're done. However it goes, whatever happens, I'm right here." "Thank you," she whispered. Then she squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked through the doors like she owned the place. Evan found a bench in the waiting area and settled in for what he expected to be a long wait. He'd brought work emails to answer on his phone, but couldn't focus on any of them. Instead, he watched people come and go, patients with worried faces, staff in scrubs moving with purpose, visitors carrying flowers and balloons, a whole world of human drama playing out in one building. His phone buzzed. A text from Noah, obviously sent by Mrs. Henderson. "Is Claire going to get the job? Tell her I said good luck and Lila is being very good." He smiled and typed back, "She's in the interview now. We'll let you know." 45 minutes crawled by, then an hour. Evan was starting to worry when he saw Claire emerge from the elevator bank, and his heart sank because she was crying. But then he realized she was smiling too, tears streaming down her face while she laughed, and he was on his feet before he'd consciously decided to move. "I got it," she said as soon as she reached him. "I got the job. They want me to start next Monday. Full-time with benefits, and the pay is better than I expected, and they're helping with childcare costs, and..." She broke off, covering her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with the force of her emotions. Evan didn't think. He just pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against him, crying into his shoulder while people in the waiting room pretended not to stare. He could feel her trembling, could feel the months of stress and fear draining out of her with every sob. "You did it," he murmured into her hair. "I knew you could do it." "I was so scared," she gasped between sobs. "I thought for sure they'd see right through me, that they'd know I was a mess. But Jennifer was there, and she was so nice, and the nursing manager asked all the questions we practiced, and I knew the answers, and..." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I start next Monday. 9 days. Oh my God, Evan, I start in 9 days." "That's amazing. That's incredible." He was grinning like an idiot, caught up in her joy and relief. "We need to celebrate. What do you want to do? Fancy dinner? Go to the coast? Dance in the street?" She laughed through her tears. "I just want to go home and tell Lila, even though she can't understand. I want to hold my daughter and know that I can actually take care of her now." Home. She'd said home, not your house or back to your place. Home. The word settled in Evan's chest like something warm and right. They drove back with the radio on, Claire singing along to songs she clearly didn't know all the words to, making up lyrics that were absurd and joyful. Evan found himself laughing more than he had in months, maybe years. When they pulled into the driveway, Claire turned to him with an expression of such pure gratitude that it almost hurt to look at. "I couldn't have done this without you. You know that, right? I would still be at that bus stop, or worse if you hadn't stopped.
You would have found another way, Evan said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. You're a survivor. Maybe, but I'm really glad I didn't have to survive alone. They went inside to find Mrs. Henderson had not only watched Lila, but had also cleaned the kitchen, done laundry, and made lunch. She took one look at Claire's tear-stained, smiling face and clapped her hands together. You got it! I got it! Claire swept up Lila from the playmat, spinning her around. Mama got a job, baby girl. A real job with real money. We're going to be okay. Noah came home from school to find the house in full celebration mode. Mrs. Henderson had somehow materialized a cake. Evan suspected she'd had it ready just in case. And they had an impromptu party in the kitchen with paper plates and Noah's off-key rendition of congratulations that he'd apparently learned at school for some other purpose entirely. Does this mean you're staying? Noah asked Claire while they ate cake. Like, staying? Claire glanced at Evan, uncertain. They hadn't actually discussed logistics beyond getting the job. Evan made a split-second decision. For as long as they need to, he said firmly. Right, Claire? Right, she agreed softly. If that's really okay. It's really okay. That evening, after the celebration died down and Mrs. Henderson had gone home and Noah was absorbed in homework, Evan and Claire sat down to talk details. She'd start the following Monday, which meant they had just over a week to get everything organized. Childcare would be partially covered by the hospital's program, but she'd need to supplement with a babysitter or daycare. She'd be working 3 12-hour shifts a week, which meant long days but also 4 days off. I'll pay rent, Claire insisted as they made lists at the kitchen table. And split utilities and groceries. I'm not living here for free. We'll figure out something fair, Evan agreed. But Claire, you need to save money too. First and last month's rent for when you're ready for your own place, security deposits, all of that. Don't bankrupt yourself trying to pay me back. I need to pay my own way. You will, but smartly, not desperately. He looked up from his notes. What if we say you cover groceries for now? That's a couple $100 a month, and it lets you save the rest of your paycheck. Once you have a cushion, we can revisit. Claire looked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find a good counter-argument. Okay, but I'm still keeping a tab of everything, and I'm paying you back for the nebulizer and the doctor visit, and the tab is getting very long, Evan said with a small smile. You sure you want to keep adding to it? Positive, I pay my debts. I know you do. That's one of the things He stopped, suddenly aware he'd been about to say something he wasn't ready to say. One of the things that makes you good at this, at surviving. If Claire noticed the stumble, she didn't mention it. They kept planning, working through logistics and schedules, and it felt natural in a way that should have been impossible, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. The week that followed fell into a rhythm that felt more like a family than a temporary arrangement. Evan went back to work at the warehouse, coming home to find Claire and Lila already there, the house smelling like actual cooking instead of the takeout and frozen dinners he'd been living on. She insisted on making dinner. I need to contribute somehow. And it turned out she was a much better cook than he'd expected. Noah flourished with the extra attention, basking in Claire's interest in his school projects and dinosaur facts. She helped with homework while Evan cleaned up after dinner, and they'd established a routine where Noah got to play with Lila for 15 minutes before bed if he'd finished all his responsibilities. The 7-year-old took this duty seriously, entertaining the baby with enthusiasm that sometimes bordered on manic. Gentle Noah, Claire would remind him as he made the stuffed T-Rex dance a little too enthusiastically near Lila's face. She's still very small. I know, I'm being careful, see? She's laughing. That means she likes it. And Lila did laugh, more and more each day. She was thriving in the stability of the house, her asthma better controlled with regular nebulizer treatments, and the reduced stress that came from having a calm mother. Claire was sleeping better, eating regularly, slowly becoming the person she must have been before everything fell apart. Evan caught himself watching her sometimes. The way she hummed while cooking, the way she'd absently play with her hair when she was concentrating, the way her whole face lit up when Lila did something new. He'd catch himself and look away, Mrs. Henderson's warning echoing in his mind. Don't confuse gratitude with something else. Don't take advantage of her vulnerability.
But it was getting harder to remember that warning when she'd look at him over dinner and smile like he was the best thing that had happened to her. Harder still when they'd end up on the couch after Noah was asleep, talking about everything and nothing until midnight, sharing pieces of themselves in the dark. Thursday night, 4 days before her first shift, Claire brought up something that had clearly been weighing on her mind. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Evan looked up from his laptop where he'd been pretending to work. "Okay. Are we—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Are we doing this because it makes sense logistically, or is there something else happening here?" The question hung between them, impossible to dodge. Evan closed his laptop slowly, buying time. "I don't know," he admitted. "I keep telling myself I'm just helping someone who needs help, that this is what good people do, but then what? Then you smile at something Noah said, or you fall asleep on the couch watching TV, or you make coffee exactly the way I like it without me telling you how, and I think maybe it's not just about being helpful anymore." Claire was very still, watching him with an intensity that made his chest tight. "Is that bad?" "I don't know. Maybe. You're vulnerable. I'm your— what? Your rescuer? Your landlord? There's a power imbalance there that feels complicated." "What if I told you I've been thinking the same thing?" Claire said quietly. "What if I told you that I lie awake at night trying to figure out if what I'm feeling is real or just gratitude or some kind of trauma response? Are you? Feeling something?" She looked down at her hands. "Yeah, I am. And it terrifies me because the last time I trusted someone, the last time I let myself feel something real, he left me pregnant and alone. And I swore I wouldn't do that again, wouldn't put myself in a position to be hurt. But then you stopped at that bus stop and you've been nothing but kind and patient and—" She broke off, frustrated. "I don't know what's real anymore." Evan moved from his chair to the couch, sitting close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "I think maybe we're both overthinking this." "How do you mean?" "I mean, yes, the circumstances are weird. Yes, there's a power imbalance. Yes, you're vulnerable, and I'm probably projecting some of my own needs onto this situation. But underneath all of that—" He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "Underneath all of that, I like you. Not because I rescued you, not because you need me, but because you're smart and funny and a good mom, and you don't take any of my crap when I'm being an idiot." Claire laughed shakily, her fingers tightening around his. "You like me because I call you on your crap?" Among other things. He was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how her hand felt in his, how easy it would be to just lean forward, and he pulled back. "But we should probably take this slow. Give you time to get settled at work, get your feet under you, make sure this is real and not just circumstances," Claire finished. "Yeah, you're right. We should be smart about this." Very smart. Extremely smart. The smartest. They sat there holding hands, neither one pulling away despite agreeing they should take things slow. Outside, rain started to fall again, the perpetual Portland rain that had brought them together in the first place. "Can I ask you something else?" Claire said after a while. "Sure. Do you think Sarah would be okay with this? With me being here, with whatever this is between us?" The question surprised him. Most people avoided mentioning Sarah, like talking about his dead wife would somehow offend him. But Claire had never been most people. "Honestly, I think she'd be thrilled. Sarah was always the one pushing me to be social, to make connections, to not become one of those grumpy old men who yells at kids on his lawn." He smiled at the memory. "She made me promise near the end that I wouldn't shut down, that I'd let people in, that I'd let myself be happy again." That must have been hard for her, to think about you with someone else. It was. But she was also practical. She knew Noah needed a fully functional parent, not a depressed shell. And she knew I'm not built to be alone forever. He looked at Claire. "I think she'd like you. You're both nurses, both fierce about protecting the people you love. She'd appreciate that you don't baby me or treat me like I'm fragile." "You're not fragile. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." "I'm really not. I'm just a guy who got knocked down and didn't have the option of staying down." "That's literally the definition of strong, Evan." They sat together until Claire's phone alarm went off, time for Lila's late evening treatment. She squeezed his hand once before standing up, and Evan felt the loss of contact like something physical. That night, lying in bed, unable to sleep, Evan let himself really think about what was happening. He was falling for Claire. Maybe had already fallen somewhere between the bus stop and now. It was too fast, too complicated, too risky. But it was also real as anything he'd felt since Sarah died. The question was whether he was brave enough to pursue it, whether Claire was stable enough to handle it, whether they could build something real out of circumstances that were fundamentally unequal. He didn't have answers. But lying there in the dark, listening to the sounds of other people sleeping in his house, feeling less alone than he had in 3 years, Evan thought maybe sometimes you didn't need all the answers. Sometimes you just needed to be brave enough to ask the questions. Friday and Saturday passed in a flurry of preparation for Claire's first shift. She was nervous about leaving Lila, about being back in a hospital environment, about proving she deserved the job they'd given her. Evan and Mrs. Henderson tag-teamed reassurance, while Noah contributed by drawing a good luck picture of Claire surrounded by cartoon hearts and dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are for protection, Noah explained seriously, in case any mean people try to be mean to you at work. That's very thoughtful, Claire said, genuinely touched. I'll keep it in my locker. Sunday evening, the night before her first shift, Claire was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Evan finally stopped her by physically stepping into her path. You need to calm down before you pass out from hyperventilating. I can't calm down. What if I've forgotten everything? What if I make a mistake? What if you're amazing and everyone loves you and you remember why you became a nurse in the first place? Evan countered. Claire, you know how to do this job. You've done it for 6 years. 1 month of unemployment didn't erase all of that. But what if it did? What if I freeze up or... He put his hands on her shoulders gently but firmly. Listen to me. You are going to walk into that hospital tomorrow and you are going to be great. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect on their first day back. But great. Because that's who you are. And if you have a rough moment, you'll push through it. And if you make a small mistake, you'll learn from it. That's all anyone can do. Claire's breathing slowed slightly, her eyes searching his face. How are you so calm about this? Because I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet. He pulled her into a hug, and she melted against him, her face pressed into his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for believing in me when I couldn't. Always, he said, and realized with a start that he meant it. Not just for now, not just until she got back on her feet, but always. Whenever she needed someone to believe in her, he wanted to be that person. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while the world spun on outside, and Evan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just attraction or convenience or loneliness. This was something deeper, something that felt terrifyingly like the beginning of love. Mrs. Henderson's words came back to him. Be careful with her heart and yours. But maybe careful was overrated. Maybe sometimes you had to be brave instead. Claire pulled back eventually, wiping her eyes. I should try to sleep. Early shift tomorrow. You're going to be amazing, Evan said again. Keep telling me that. Maybe eventually I'll believe it. After she went upstairs, Evan stood alone in his kitchen, thinking about possibilities and risks, and the strange, wonderful way life could turn on a single moment. 4 days ago, she'd been a stranger at a bus stop. Tomorrow, she'd be walking into a new job, a new life, a new chance, and he'd be here when she got home, waiting to hear how it went. Not because he had to be, but because he wanted to be. Because somewhere in the space between that rainy night and now, his life had stopped being just his. It had become theirs, his and Claire's and Noah's and Lila's, a patchwork family built from need and kindness, and something that was starting to feel a lot like love. He turned off the lights and headed upstairs, checking on Noah out of habit. His son was asleep with a stuffed stegosaurus clutched to his chest, peaceful and secure in a way he hadn't been right after Sarah died. Having Claire and Lila here had been good for Noah, had given him a sense of family again, of not being the only kid in a too-quiet house. Evan stood in the hallway between Noah's room and the spare room where Claire and Lila slept, and thought about the future. Not the distant future. That was still too uncertain, too frightening. Just tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the small moments that would add up to something bigger. Whatever happened, whatever this became, he knew one thing for certain. Stopping at that bus stop had changed his life. Maybe saved it, in a way he hadn't even known it needed saving. And if that made him foolish or reckless or too willing to believe in second chances, then so be it. Some chances were worth taking. Some people were worth the risk. And as Evan finally climbed into his own bed, he found himself hoping that Claire would think so too. Morning arrived with the aggressive beeping of Claire's alarm at 5:30, a sound that jolted Evan awake despite it being in another room. He lay there for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of Claire moving around, water running, footsteps on the stairs. He should go back to sleep. He didn't need to be up for another hour, but somehow his body wouldn't cooperate. Instead, he found himself pulling on sweatpants and heading downstairs. Claire was in the kitchen, already dressed in fresh scrubs, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She was staring at the coffee maker like it held the secrets of the universe, her hands wrapped around an empty mug. "You're up early," she said without turning around. "You didn't have to." "I know. Couldn't sleep." Evan took the mug from her hands and filled it once the coffee finished brewing. "First day jitters are contagious, apparently." She accepted the mug with a grateful smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I feel like I'm going to throw up. Is that normal?" "Completely normal. I threw up before my first day at the warehouse. Sarah had to physically push me out the door." "That's somehow comforting." Claire took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat, tried again. "What if I'm terrible? What if they realize they made a mistake hiring me?" "Then they'll train you until you're not terrible. But you won't be terrible. You're going to walk in there and remember why you love this job." Evan pulled eggs from the refrigerator. "Eat something. You can't work a 12-hour shift on just coffee and anxiety." "I'm not hungry." "Doesn't matter. Eat anyway." He made scrambled eggs and toast while Claire paced the kitchen, checking and rechecking her bag. ID badge, stethoscope, pen, notebook, the good luck drawing from Noah carefully folded in her pocket. Evan recognized the nervous energy, the need to control something when everything felt chaotic. He'd done the same thing after Sarah died, obsessively organizing things that didn't need organizing just to feel like he had a handle on any part of his life. "Sit," he commanded gently, setting a plate in front of her. "Eat. Breathe. You're going to be fine." Claire sat, but only picked at her food, moving it around the plate more than actually eating it. Upstairs, Lila started to cry. Her morning feeding cry, distinctive from her other various cries that Claire had learned to interpret like a language. "I should—" Claire started to stand, but Evan waved her back down. "I've got her. Finish your breakfast." He went upstairs and found Lila in her bassinet, face red and scrunched up with displeasure at having been left alone. The moment Evan picked her up, she quieted slightly, though her lower lip still trembled with the injustice of it all. "I know, sweetheart. Your mama's got a big day and she's stressed about leaving you, but Mrs. Henderson's coming at 7, and she's going to spoil you absolutely rotten." He carried Lila downstairs, grabbed a bottle from the fridge with his free hand. He was getting good at the one-handed parent juggling act, and settled on the couch to feed her. Claire appeared in the doorway of the living room, her expression soft and complicated as she watched him with her daughter. "You're really good at this, the whole baby thing. Muscle memory, it's like riding a bike, except the bike screams and needs to be fed every 3 hours." Lila was drinking contentedly now, her tiny hands wrapped around Evan's much larger one. "She's going to be fine today, Claire. And so are you. What if she needs me? What if her asthma flares up and I'm not there?" "Then Mrs. Henderson will handle it. She has all your contact information. She knows where the nebulizer is. She's raised more children than both of us combined. Lila is in good hands." Claire came and sat beside them on the couch, reaching out to stroke her daughter's cheek. "I've never left her before. Not for more than an hour or two." "I know, and that's hard. But you're not abandoning her. You're taking care of her, working so you can provide for her. That's what good parents do. Is that what you told yourself when you had to go back to work after Sarah died?" The question caught Evan off guard. "Yeah, actually, every single day for about 6 months. Noah would cry when I dropped him off at daycare, and I'd sit in my car in the parking lot feeling like the worst father in the world. But I went to work anyway because not going meant we'd lose the house, lose everything, and eventually it got easier. Noah adjusted, I adjusted, we survived. How long until it stopped hurting? It still hurts sometimes, but the hurt gets smaller, more manageable. You'll see." They sat in comfortable silence while Lila finished her bottle, the baby's eyes starting to droop with satisfaction. The sun was coming up now, pale light filtering through the windows, and somewhere outside a neighbor started their car. The world waking up, moving forward, indifferent to anyone's anxiety or fear. At 6:45, Mrs. Henderson's key turned in the lock. Evan had given her one years ago for emergencies that had somehow become routine. She bustled in with her usual energy, already making plans aloud. Good morning, good morning. Claire, you look beautiful. Evan, thank you for getting her fed. Now shoo, both of you. Lila and I have a very important schedule today involving that new toy piano and possibly some unsanctioned cookie consumption. She's 6 months old, Evan pointed out. She can't have cookies. The cookies are for me. The baby gets to watch and learn about the finer things in life. Mrs. Henderson shooed them toward the door. Claire, go save lives. Evan, go move boxes or whatever it is you do all day. This household is under new management. Claire was laughing despite her nerves as Evan drove her to the hospital. She's something else. She's been my lifeline since Sarah died. I honestly don't know what I would have done without her. He glanced over at Claire. You ready for this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's the spirit. He pulled up to the hospital entrance and Claire sat there for a moment, staring at the building like it might swallow her whole. Evan reached over and took her hand. You've got this. And I'll be here at 6 to pick you up. Text me if you need anything, if you want me to check on Lila, anything at all. Okay? She squeezed his hand, then took a deep breath and opened the door. Okay, I can do this. You can do this? Evan confirmed. He watched her walk through the automatic doors, her spine straight and her chin up despite the nerves he knew were eating her alive. And he felt that same swell of pride he'd felt at the interview, that sense of being invested in her success in a way that went beyond just helping someone in need. The day at work dragged interminably. Evan found himself checking his phone constantly, waiting for some text from Claire. Good news, bad news, any news. But she'd said no contact during shifts unless it was an emergency, and he was trying to respect that boundary even though it was killing him. At lunch, he texted Mrs. Henderson. How's Lila? The response came back immediately. Perfect angel, currently napping. Stop worrying. Easier said than done. Evan had never been good at the waiting part, the helpless standing by while someone he cared about faced something difficult. It had been torture during Sarah's cancer treatments, sitting in waiting rooms while doctors did things he couldn't help with, couldn't control, couldn't fix. This was different, but somehow the same. Claire was out there trying to rebuild her life, and all he could do was wait and hope. His phone buzzed around 2 o'clock. A text from Claire. Survived morning, only cried once. Patient load manageable. Missing Lila, but okay. Evan typed back, proud of you. Lila's great. Mrs. H says she's an angel. You're doing amazing. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, thank you for believing in me. Always, he sent back, and meant it more than she probably knew. The afternoon passed slightly faster with the knowledge that Claire was okay, that she was making it through. Evan left work at 5, picked up Noah from school, and headed home to find Mrs. Henderson had not only watched Lila all day, but had also somehow made dinner for the whole household. You didn't have to do that, Evan protested, though the smell of pot roast made his stomach growl. I wanted to. Claire's going to be exhausted after her first shift back, and you're going to be playing single parent to 2 kids until she gets home. Consider it my contribution to this little found family you're building. Found family. The phrase stuck with Evan as he helped Noah with homework while keeping one eye on Lila, who was in her bouncer watching them with grave interest. That's exactly what this was, not related by blood or law, but bound together by circumstance and choice and the simple decision to show up for each other. At 5:45, Evan bundled both kids into the car for the drive to pick up Claire. Noah chattered the whole way about his day, something about a science experiment with volcanoes and Marcus accidentally spilling baking soda everywhere, and the teacher having to evacuate the classroom. Lila dozed in her car seat, worn out from a day of being doted on by Mrs. Henderson. Evan pulled up to the hospital entrance at exactly 6 o'clock, and his heart did something complicated when he saw Claire emerge through the doors. She looked exhausted, her hair escaping from its ponytail, her scrubs slightly rumpled, but she was smiling. A real, genuine smile that transformed her whole face. She slid into the passenger seat with a sigh of relief. Oh my God, sitting down feels amazing. How was it? Evan asked, pulling away from the curb. Hard. Good. Overwhelming. Amazing. She turned to look at Lila in the back seat, reaching back to touch her daughter's tiny hand. I forgot how much I love it, how good it feels to actually help people. I had this little girl, maybe 5 years old, who was terrified of getting an IV, and I sat with her and we talked about her stuffed rabbit, and I got her laughing, and she didn't even notice when I put the needle in. Her voice caught. Her mom thanked me, said most nurses didn't take the time to really see kids, to treat them like people instead of just small patients. That's because most nurses aren't you, Evan said quietly. Claire's back, Noah announced from the back seat. Did you save anyone today? Not exactly saved, but I helped them feel better. That's kind of like saving them, right? That counts, Noah declared authoritatively. Dad, can we have ice cream to celebrate Claire's first day? We have pot roast waiting at home that Mrs. Henderson made. But ice cream is more celebratory. We'll have ice cream after pot roast. How's that for a compromise? They drove home through the early evening traffic, Noah continuing his play-by-play of the volcano incident while Claire listened and made appropriate impressed sounds. Evan caught her eye in the rearview mirror once, and she mouthed, "Thank you," in a way that made his chest feel too full. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Noah talking with his mouth full, Lila fussing until Claire held her, Mrs. Henderson telling embarrassing stories about her grandchildren that had Noah in stitches. Claire looked overwhelmed but happy, the kind of happy that came from being surrounded by noise and life and people who cared. After Mrs. Henderson left and Noah was in bed, Evan found Claire on the couch with Lila, still in her scrubs, looking simultaneously exhausted and energized. You should sleep, he said, sitting down beside her. I know, but I'm too wired. My brain won't shut off. She adjusted Lila in her arms. Thank you for today, for taking care of her, for picking me up, for all of it. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I want to. She looked at him, and something in her expression made Evan's breath catch. I keep waiting for the catch, for the moment when you tell me what you really want, what this is actually costing me. Because in my experience, nobody does this much for someone without expecting something in return. What if I told you I'm not expecting anything? Then I'd say you're either a saint or a liar, and I don't believe in saints. Evan thought about how to answer that. He could lie, could pretend this was purely altruistic, or he could be honest, even if honesty was terrifying. I'm not a saint, he said slowly. And you're right. I do want something. I want to not feel alone anymore. I want my house to feel like a home instead of a museum to my dead wife. I want Noah to have something resembling a normal family. And I want... He stopped, then pushed forward. I want to see where this goes between us. Not because I rescued you or because you owe me, but because I like you. Because you make me laugh and you call me on my crap, and you fit here in a way I didn't know I was missing. Claire was very still, her eyes wide. Evan, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible and the power dynamics are messy, and we should probably wait until you're more stable. But I'm tired of being careful. I spent 3 years being careful, protecting myself, not letting anyone too close, and I'm done with that. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his hand lingering on her cheek. So yeah, I want something. I want you. Not because I helped you, but because of who you are. I'm a mess, Claire whispered. I'm barely holding it together. I have a daughter and trauma and trust issues, and I'm a widower with a 7-year-old and my own trauma, and I haven't been on a real date in 4 years. We're both disasters. Maybe that's the point. She laughed, shaky and breathless. This is crazy. Probably. Is that a no? It's not a no. She shifted Lila to her other shoulder, leaning closer to him. It's a, let's take it slow and see what happens. It's a, I'm terrified, but I want to try. It's a... Evan kissed her, just leaned forward and closed the distance between them, cutting off her words with his lips on hers. It was gentle, careful, a question more than a statement. And after a moment of surprise, Claire kissed him back, her free hand coming up to cup his face, and it felt like something clicking into place, like the universe saying yes, This is right. They broke apart slowly, and Claire was smiling, that beautiful, genuine smile that made everything worthwhile. Okay, she said. Okay, let's try this. Yeah? Yeah, but slow, really slow. I need time to figure out what's real and what's just gratitude and trauma bonding. As slow as you need, Evan promised. I'm not going anywhere. Lila chose that moment to start fussing, demanding attention, and they both laughed at the timing. Claire stood up to put her daughter down for the night, pausing to lean down and kiss Evan once more, quick and sweet and full of promise. Thank you, she said again, for everything, for being patient, for being you. Right back at you, Evan said, watching her head upstairs with Lila. He sat alone on the couch for a long time after that, touching his lips and grinning like a teenager. It was ridiculous. He was 42 years old, too old for butterflies and giddy happiness over a first kiss. But there it was anyway, this feeling of possibility, of new beginnings, of second chances. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson. I saw that kiss through the window when I came back for my purse. About damn time, be good to each other. Evan laughed out loud. Of course, Mrs. Henderson had seen. Nothing happened in this neighborhood without her knowing about it. He texted back, You're shameless. I'm invested. There's a difference. Now go to bed. You look like a lovesick fool sitting there grinning at nothing. He did go to bed eventually, but sleep was a long time coming. He kept replaying the kiss, the conversation, the feeling of Claire in his arms, kept thinking about the future in a way he hadn't let himself think in years. Not the distant future, that was still too scary, but tomorrow and next week, and all the small moments that would add up to something bigger. They fell into a routine over the next few weeks, a rhythm that felt natural despite being built from chaos. Claire worked her 3 12-hour shifts, and on those days, Evan and Mrs. Henderson tag-teamed childcare, with Noah appointed as official Lila entertainment director. On Claire's days off, she took over the household with the efficiency of someone grateful to contribute, cooking real meals and doing laundry and generally making the house feel lived in and loved. They were careful about the physical side of things, conscious of Noah's presence and Claire's need to take things slow. But there were stolen kisses in the kitchen when Noah wasn't looking, held hands during late-night conversations, a gradual shifting closer together on the couch during movie nights, small intimacies that felt more significant than grand gestures. Noah accepted the change with the easy adaptability of children, though he did have questions. Are you and Claire boyfriend and girlfriend now? He asked one morning over breakfast, with the blunt curiosity that made Evan both love and fear 7-year-olds. Something like that, Evan said carefully. Is that okay with you? Noah considered this seriously. Does that mean she's staying forever? I don't know about forever, but for a while, yeah. Good. I like having her here. And Lila's pretty cool even though she can't really do anything yet except cry and eat and poop. That's basically what you did at her age. Really? That's so weird. How did I get from that to awesome? Practice and good parenting, Evan said, ruffling his son's hair. Does this mean Lila's like my sister? The question stopped Evan cold. He hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't considered how Noah might be interpreting this new family structure. Would you want her to be? I think so. Marcus at school has a little sister and he complains about her a lot, but he also says she's pretty fun sometimes. And Lila doesn't really do anything annoying yet except cry when I'm trying to sleep. Let's just see what happens, okay? But yeah, buddy, you can think of her as a sister if you want to. Noah seemed satisfied with that answer, returning his attention to his cereal. But Evan sat there for a long moment, struck by the weight of that simple conversation. They were becoming a family, not through traditional means, not through marriage or official adoption, but through choice and proximity and the simple act of showing up for each other every day. That afternoon, while Noah was at school and Lila was napping, Evan and Claire found themselves alone for the first time in days. They were supposed to be doing laundry, but somehow they'd ended up on the couch instead, Claire tucked under Evan's arm, just talking. Noah asked if Lila was his sister today, Evan said. Claire stiffened slightly. What did you tell him? I said she could be if he wanted her to be. Was that okay? Yeah, it's okay. It's just, that's a big thing. That's a commitment. I know, but Claire, we're already committed. Maybe not legally or officially, but we're living together, raising kids together, figuring out this life together. At what point do we stop calling it temporary? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. I'm scared. Of what? Of this not being real. Of waking up one day and realizing we were just two broken people who clung to each other because we were both drowning. Of it falling apart and having to start over again, except now there are kids involved who'll get hurt too. Evan understood that fear intimately. He'd felt it himself late at night when the anxiety kept him awake. What if I told you I think about that too? That I worry we're moving too fast, or that I'm taking advantage of your vulnerability, or that this is all going to blow up in our faces? That doesn't make me feel better. I know. But here's the thing. I think about all of that, and then I think about you. About the way you sing to Lila when you think nobody's listening. About how you help Noah with his homework, even though you're exhausted from work. About how you make coffee the way I like it, and fold the laundry the way Sarah used to, and fit into this house like you've always been here. And I think maybe the fear doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is that we're choosing this anyway. Claire tilted her head up to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears.
When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just desperate not to screw this up. He kissed her forehead. We don't have to figure everything out today. We don't have to have all the answers. We just have to keep showing up. I can do that, Claire said softly. I'm good at showing up. I know you are. It's one of the things I love about you. The word hung in the air between them. Love. Evan hadn't meant to say it, hadn't planned it, but there it was. Too soon, probably. Too much. But also true. Claire's breath hitched. Evan, you don't have to say it back. I know it's too soon. I just needed you to know. It's terrifying, she whispered, but I think I love you too, which is insane because it's been less than 2 months, and I barely know you, and this should not be happening this fast. And yet here we are. Here we are, she agreed, and kissed him with an intensity that spoke to all the things they couldn't say, all the hope and fear and desperate wanting wrapped up in this impossible situation they'd created. They were interrupted by Lila's cry from upstairs. Impeccable timing, as always. Claire laughed against Evan's lips and pulled away reluctantly. Rain check? She asked. Rain check, he confirmed. As Claire headed upstairs, Evan sat there feeling like his entire world had tilted on its axis. Love. He was in love with her, not just attracted to her, or fond of her, or invested in her success, but actually in love. The kind of love that made you stupid and brave and willing to risk everything. He'd loved Sarah with the intensity of youth, with the certainty that came from not knowing how fragile life could be. This was different, older, sadder, more aware of everything that could go wrong. But also deeper maybe because it was built on understanding just how rare it was to find someone worth the risk. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Henderson. Dinner at my place tonight, all of you. No arguments. Evan smiled. Mrs. Henderson had been watching their little family form with the satisfaction of a matchmaker seeing her plan come together. He typed back, "We'll be there. Thank you." That evening they walked the 3 houses down to Mrs. Henderson's, Evan carrying Lila while Noah ran ahead and Claire held his free hand. It felt natural, this little parade of people who'd somehow become his everything. Mrs. Henderson greeted them at the door with the warmth of someone who'd been waiting for this exact configuration of humans to arrive. Dinner was loud and chaotic, with Mrs. Henderson's grandson visiting and providing Noah with a partner in crime. The 2 boys constructed elaborate scenarios with action figures while the adults talked, and Lila dozed contentedly in Claire's arms. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely perfect. Walking home later, Noah between them holding both their hands, Lila asleep on Evan's shoulder, Claire leaned over and whispered, "This feels like a family." "That's because it is a family," Evan whispered back. And looking at them, this collection of people thrown together by circumstance and held together by choice, he knew it was true. They might not fit any traditional definition, might not make sense on paper, but they were family nonetheless. The kind you built instead of inherited. The kind that mattered more because you chose it. That night, after Noah was in bed and Lila was settled, Evan found Claire in the spare room. Her room, though she still called it the spare room, like she was afraid to claim it too permanently.
She was folding laundry, and there was something about the domesticity of the moment that made Evan's heart ache. "Hey," he said from the doorway. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, yourself. I've been thinking." "That sounds dangerous." "Probably, but I think we should make this official." Claire's hand stilled on the laundry. "What do you mean?" "I mean, stop calling this temporary. Stop pretending you're going to move out any day now. You've been here 6 weeks, Claire. 6 weeks of this working, of us working. At what point do we admit this is permanent?" "Evan, I'm not asking you to marry me," he said quickly. "Not yet, anyway. I'm just asking you to stop living like you're going to leave, to actually unpack all your boxes, to let this be home instead of just a place you're staying." Claire set down the shirt she was holding and walked over to him. "You really want that? You want us to stay?" "I want you to stay. I want Lila to stay. I want to keep waking up to the sound of her crying and your singing and the smell of actual food being cooked. I want Noah to have a sister and you to have a family and all of us to stop being so damn careful all the time. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does?" He pulled her closer. "Claire, I spent 3 years being too scared to take chances, too scared to date, too scared to let anyone in, too scared to believe I could have this again. And then you showed up at that bus stop and suddenly I'm not scared anymore. Or I am, but I'm doing it anyway. Because you're worth it. We're worth it." She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll stay. We'll unpack the boxes. We'll stop pretending this is temporary." She laughed through her tears. "We'll be your family." Evan kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. And when they finally broke apart, he realized this was what coming home felt like. Not a place, but a person. Not safety, but the willingness to be brave enough to risk everything for something real. They stood there in the doorway of what was no longer a spare room but Claire's room, holding each other while the house settled around them. Outside, Portland did what Portland does best. Started to rain, that steady precipitation that felt less like weather and more like a constant companion. The same rain that had brought them together 2 months ago, that had given them this second chance at family and love and hope. "Thank you," Claire whispered against his chest. "For what?" "For stopping, for seeing me, for giving us a home." "Thank you for letting me," Evan said. "For being brave enough to get in the car with a stranger, for trusting me with your daughter, for making this house feel alive again." They stood there until they heard Noah calling from his room, nightmare or thirst or just the need for reassurance that his people were still there. They went together to check on him, and that felt right too. Co-parenting, even though there were no legal ties, no official arrangements. Just 2 adults choosing to show up for a kid who needed them. Later, lying in his own bed but not sleeping, Evan thought about the strange and wonderful way life could turn on a single decision. Stop or keep driving, help or look away. Risk or play it safe. He'd stopped, had helped, had risked everything, and it had given him back his life. Not the life he'd had before. That was gone forever, buried with Sarah in a cemetery he visited less and less frequently. But a new life, different but no less valid. Claire wasn't Sarah and never would be. This family wasn't the one he'd lost. But it was his family nonetheless, built from brokenness and held together by love. And really, Evan thought as he finally drifted off to sleep, wasn't that what all families were? Collections of imperfect people choosing to love each other despite everything? They might have started in tragedy and desperation, but they'd built something beautiful from it, something worth keeping, something worth fighting for. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, bills to pay, schedules to coordinate, the endless logistics of merging 2 fractured families into one whole. But tonight, everyone he loved was safe and warm and under his roof. And that was more than enough. That was everything. 3 months passed in a blur of ordinary miracles. Claire settled into her job at the hospital with the confidence of someone who'd finally found solid ground beneath her feet. She came home exhausted but fulfilled, trading stories about patients with Evan over dinner while Noah provided commentary and Lila babbled increasingly complex nonsense from her high chair. The boxes in her room, their room really, though they still maintained separate bedrooms for Noah's sake, had been unpacked weeks ago, her clothes mixed with Sarah's old things in the closet, her toiletries claiming space in the bathroom. Small acts of permanence that felt monumental. But permanence, Evan was learning, didn't mean everything was perfect. It just meant you stayed even when things got hard. The first real fight happened on a Tuesday in late autumn. Evan came home from work to find Claire in the kitchen, tension radiating from every line of her body. Lila was crying, that particular cry that meant she'd been crying for a while, and Noah was nowhere to be seen. "What's wrong?" Evan asked, immediately on alert. "Nothing," Claire said, her voice tight. "Everything's fine." "That's clearly not true. Where's Noah?" "In his room. We had a disagreement." Evan's stomach dropped. "What kind of disagreement?" "The kind where he told me I'm not his mother and I can't tell him what to do." Claire's voice cracked on the last word. She was trying to hold it together, but Evan could see the hurt bleeding through. "He wouldn't do his homework. I asked him 3 times, then told him no TV until it was done. And he—" She broke off, blinking back tears. Evan felt torn in 2 directions, comfort Claire or deal with Noah. He chose Noah first, taking the stairs 2 at a time. His son was on his bed, arms crossed, face mutinous. "Want to tell me what happened?" Evan asked, keeping his voice calm. "She's not my mom," Noah said immediately. "She can't boss me around. She's an adult who lives in this house and helps take care of you. That means she can absolutely tell you to do your homework. But she's not mom. She's just Claire." And there it was, the grief they'd all been dancing around, the ghost that still lived in every corner of this house. Evan sat down on the edge of Noah's bed, choosing his words carefully. "You're right. She's not mom. Nobody's ever going to be mom. But, buddy, Claire loves you. She makes your lunch every morning. She helps with your homework. She comes to your school events. She does all the things moms do." "But she didn't choose me," Noah said, and his voice was small now, vulnerable. "She chose you. I'm just here because I come with you." Oh God. Evan felt his heart crack open. "Noah, look at me." He waited until his son's eyes met his. "Claire absolutely chose you. She could have found her own apartment by now, could have gone anywhere. But she stays here because this is her family. You're her family. Do you understand that? Then why doesn't she love me like mom did? She does love you, just differently, and that's okay. Love doesn't have to look the same to be real." Evan pulled Noah into a hug, feeling his son's skinny arms wrap around him tight. "I know this is confusing. I know you miss mom. I miss her too. But that doesn't mean we can't love other people. It doesn't mean Claire isn't important." "I made her cry," Noah whispered against Evan's shoulder. "I didn't mean to make her cry." "I know, bud. How about you come downstairs and apologize?" They found Claire in the living room, rocking Lila and staring at nothing. She looked up when they entered, her expression guarded. "I'm sorry," Noah said immediately. "I didn't mean to be mean. I was just mad about homework, and I said something stupid." Claire's face softened. "Come here." She shifted Lila to one arm and held the other out to Noah, who went to her hesitantly. "I'm sorry, too. I shouldn't have pushed so hard about the homework. And Noah, you're right. I'm not your mom. But I love you anyway. Not because of your dad, but because of you. Because you're smart and funny and kind. And being part of your life is a privilege, okay?" "Okay," Noah said, voice muffled against her shoulder. "Can we still have TV time?" "After homework," Claire said, but she was smiling now. "Nice try, though." That night, after both kids were asleep, Evan and Claire sat on the back porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and holding hands in the dark. "That was hard," Claire said quietly. "Yeah, but we got through it." "Did we? Or did we just postpone the explosion?" She turned to look at him. "Evan, I don't know how to be a stepmom. I don't know where the lines are, what I'm allowed to enforce, how much authority I actually have. And I'm terrified of overstepping, but also terrified of being irrelevant." "You're not irrelevant. You could never be irrelevant." He squeezed her hand. "But you're right. We need to figure out the rules. What discipline looks like, how we present ourselves to Noah, all of it. We've been winging it, and that worked when things were easy. But now we need a real plan," Claire finished. "We need to actually talk about what this family looks like." They stayed up until 2 in the morning, talking through logistics and boundaries and expectations. It wasn't romantic or exciting, just 2 adults trying to figure out how to blend their lives without breaking anything important. But it felt necessary. this unglamorous work of building something sustainable. I think we should tell Noah the truth, Evan said finally. About us. About the fact that we're together, that this is permanent. He's old enough to understand, and I think the uncertainty is making things harder. What if he's not ready? What if he sees it as replacing Sarah? Then we'll deal with it. But Claire, we can't keep tiptoeing around this. We're living like a family. We should acknowledge it. So the next evening, they sat Noah down for what Evan called a family meeting, which immediately made Noah suspicious because family meetings were usually about serious things like moving or money problems. Are we poor? Noah asked immediately. Is that why Claire's here? Because we can't afford our own house anymore? No, buddy, we're not poor. We're fine. Evan glanced at Claire, who nodded. But we do need to talk to you about something important. About me and Claire. Are you getting married? Noah's eyes went wide. Because Marcus's dad got married to someone new, and Marcus says she's actually really nice, but his mom was super mad about it, and... Slow down, Claire interrupted gently. We're not getting married, not right now anyway, but we are together, like boyfriend and girlfriend. And we wanted you to know that this isn't temporary. We're a family now, you, me, your dad, and Lila. Noah was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, does that mean you're staying forever? If you'll have us, yeah, Claire said. This is our home now. Your home, my home, Lila's home, all of us together. And you really love Dad? Like, actually love him? Not just staying because you need help? The directness of the question caught Claire off guard. She looked at Evan, then back at Noah. I really love him. And I really love you, both of you. I know it's different from your mom, and I'm not trying to replace her, but yeah, this is real. Noah thought about this seriously, his face scrunched up in concentration. Finally, he said, Okay, but I have rules. Rules? Evan repeated, trying not to smile. Yeah, rule 1. No kissing where I can see it because that's gross. Rule 2. You have to keep making good breakfasts because Claire's pancakes are way better than yours, Dad. Rule 3. Lila's my sister now, which means I get to teach her stuff and you can't stop me. And rule 4. He paused dramatically. You have to promise you're not going to leave because people keep leaving and I don't like it. The last rule hit Evan like a physical blow. Of course. Of course that's what Noah was really afraid of. Not that Claire would replace Sarah, but that Claire would leave too. I promise, Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm not going anywhere, Noah. This is home. You're stuck with me. Okay, then I guess you can be my family. He stood up, clearly considering the conversation over. Can I go play now? I want to build this really cool Lego spaceship before bed. Yeah, buddy, go ahead. After Noah left, Evan pulled Claire into a hug. You okay? I will be. That was terrifying. You did great. He loves you, you know. He just needed to hear you say you're staying. I meant it, Claire said fiercely. I'm not leaving. This is where I belong. And she proved it in 100 small ways over the following weeks. She showed up to Noah's school play, a truly terrible production of something involving pirates, and cheered louder than any other parent. She rearranged her shifts to make sure she was home for parent-teacher conferences. She learned to French braid hair by watching YouTube videos because Noah had mentioned offhand that some of the girls at school had cool braids. Small acts of mothering that had nothing to do with biology and everything to do with choice. Thanksgiving came with its own complications. Claire's sister called, the first time they'd spoken in 3 years, having somehow heard through mutual friends that Claire had a baby and wanted to reconnect. The conversation left Claire shaken and angry and sad all at once. She wants to come for Christmas, Claire told Evan that night, pacing the bedroom. Says she wants to meet Lila, wants to fix things between us. But she wasn't there when I needed her. She didn't call when I was living on the streets with a baby. And now that things are good, now she wants to be involved? What do you want? Evan asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell. Part of me wants my sister back. She stopped pacing, running her hands through her hair. What would you do? Evan thought about it. I'd probably give her a chance. Not because she deserves it, but because you do. Because holding on to anger takes energy you could be using for better things. You're too wise for your own good, Claire muttered, but she was smiling slightly. They invited Claire's sister, Rebecca, for Christmas Eve, with the understanding that it was a trial run. If things went badly, she wouldn't be invited back. It felt like a reasonable boundary, a way to test the waters without committing to anything permanent. Mrs. Henderson hosted Thanksgiving at her house, insisting she had the space and the experience, and nobody was allowed to argue. It was chaos in the best way. 3 generations of Hendersons plus Evan's makeshift family, all crammed around a table that was definitely too small, passing dishes and telling stories and laughing until their sides hurt. Noah declared it the best Thanksgiving ever, and Lila celebrated by smashing sweet potatoes into her hair. Walking home that evening, Evan carried a sleepy Lila while Noah ran ahead and Claire held his free hand. It was one of those perfect moments that you don't recognize as perfect until later, when you're looking back and realizing how lucky you were. "I'm happy," Claire said suddenly, like actually happy. Not just surviving or getting by, but happy. "Me too," Evan said. "I didn't think I'd get to be happy again after Sarah, but here we are." "Here we are," she echoed. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, then, "Evan, I think I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To make this official, to not just be living together, but actually together. I want to move my stuff into your room. I want Noah to see us as a real couple. I want to stop being so careful all the time." Evan's heart was suddenly pounding. "You sure?" "I'm sure. I love you. I trust you. And I'm tired of sleeping in separate rooms like we're characters in a Victorian novel." He laughed, stopping right there on the sidewalk to kiss her properly, not caring who saw. "I love you too. And yes, let's do it. Let's be official." They moved Claire's things that weekend, Noah helping with an enthusiasm that suggested he'd been waiting for this development. The spare room became Lila's nursery officially, painted a soft yellow with stars on the ceiling that Noah had insisted on. Claire's clothes filled Sarah's empty dresser drawers. Her books went on the shelves. Her presence claimed every corner. It should have felt like an intrusion, like betrayal. Instead, it felt like healing, like the house exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Christmas approached with its own brand of chaos. Evan took Noah to pick out a tree, a tradition from before Sarah died, that he'd maintained out of sheer stubbornness. This year, Claire and Lila came too, and the whole expedition felt different, better, complete. "That one?" Noah pointed to a tree that was definitely too big for their living room. "That one's huge," Evan protested. "It won't fit." "We'll make it fit," Claire said, her eyes sparkling. "It's perfect." They bought the too big tree and wrestled it into the house, filling the living room with pine scent and sap and the kind of mess that meant people actually lived there. They decorated it together, Noah in charge of ornament placement, Lila mostly just grabbing at shiny things, Claire and Evan stringing lights and trying not to get electrocuted. Some of the ornaments were Sarah's, and Evan waited for the wave of grief that usually accompanied them. But it didn't come. Just a gentle sadness, mixed with gratitude that he got to have this again. "Tell me about this one," Claire said, holding up an ornament made from popsicle sticks and excessive glitter. "Noah made that when he was 4. Preschool art project. Sarah hung it front and center every year." "Then front and center it goes," Claire said, giving it pride of place on the tree. Later that night, after Noah was in bed and they were cleaning up wrapping paper and ornament boxes, Claire brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "Would it be weird if I wanted to visit Sarah's grave?" Evan looked up in surprise. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because she's part of this family too. Because she gave you Noah, and she loved you, and she made you who you are. And I feel like, I don't know, like I should acknowledge that somehow. Thank her maybe for raising such a good man." Evan felt tears prick his eyes. "That's not weird. That's actually really beautiful." So on Christmas Eve morning, before Rebecca was due to arrive, the 4 of them drove to the cemetery. It was cold and gray, typical Portland winter weather, but the rain had stopped for once. Noah ran ahead to his mother's grave. He'd been here enough times to know the way, while Evan carried Lila and Claire walked beside him, nervous. Sarah's headstone was simple. Her name, her dates, the words beloved wife and mother. Noah had already placed a candy cane on it, another tradition because Sarah had loved candy canes. Evan set Lila down carefully on the grass, the baby immediately fascinated by the texture. "Hi, Sarah," Claire said softly. "I'm Claire. I'm I'm with Evan now, and I wanted to say thank you. For him, for Noah, for showing them what love looks like. I promise I'll take care of them. I promise I'll love your son like he's mine. And I promise I won't try to replace you, because nobody could. But I hope wherever you are, you're okay with this. With us. Evan had to turn away, overwhelmed. Noah came over and took his hand. It's okay, Dad. Mom would like Claire. I think they would have been friends. Yeah, buddy, I think so too. They stood there for a few more minutes, this patchwork family saying goodbye to the person who'd made half of it possible. Then they went home to prepare for Claire's sister, for Christmas Eve, for the next chapter of their constantly evolving story. Rebecca arrived at 3, nervous and apologetic, and clearly overwhelmed by the life her sister had built. She was younger than Claire by 3 years, with the same dark hair, but none of Claire's hard-earned confidence. Within 10 minutes of arrival, she was crying and apologizing and begging forgiveness. I was an idiot, she said, clutching a tissue. I said terrible things when you got pregnant, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. And then I heard you'd lost your job, and I wanted to call, but I was too ashamed, and... She looked at Lila, sleeping peacefully in Claire's arms. She's beautiful. You made a beautiful baby, Claire. Her name's Lila, Claire said carefully. And yes, she's pretty great. Dinner was awkward, but not terrible. Rebecca tried too hard, laughing too loud at Noah's jokes and asking too many questions. But underneath the nervousness, Evan could see genuine remorse, genuine love. She'd made mistakes, but she was trying to fix them. That had to count for something. After dinner, while the kids played in the living room, Lila on her playmat, Noah building an elaborate Lego creation. Rebecca pulled Claire aside in the kitchen. You landed on your feet, Rebecca said. I was so worried about you. When I heard you were homeless, I almost called. I should have called. But you didn't, Claire said, not unkindly, just stating fact. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Rebecca twisted her hands together. But Claire, you seem happy, really happy. And this Evan guy seems great, and Noah's adorable, and you have this whole life. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too, Claire said. But Rebecca, if we're going to rebuild this, you need to understand something. I don't need you anymore. I wanted you, needed you desperately, but you weren't there. And I survived anyway. I built this life without you. So if you want back in, it's because I'm choosing to let you in, not because I need you. Do you understand? I understand, and I'm grateful. I really am. They didn't fix 3 years of hurt in one evening, but they made a start. Rebecca left with promises to call, to visit regularly, to actually show up this time. And Claire let her go with cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have her sister back. That night, after everyone else was asleep, Evan found Claire on the couch staring at the Christmas tree lights. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her. Yeah, just thinking about how much has changed. 6 months ago, I was at a bus stop with nowhere to go. Now I have a job, a home, a family, maybe even my sister back. It feels impossible. But it's not impossible. It's just your life. Our life, she corrected, leaning into him. Evan, I want to make this even more official. What do you mean? Claire took a deep breath. I want to get married. Not right now, not tomorrow, but eventually. I want Noah to know this is permanent. I want Lila to grow up with married parents. She turned to look at him. I want you to be my husband. Officially, legally, forever. Evan felt like his heart might burst out of his chest. Are you proposing to me? Maybe. Is that allowed? Can I propose to you? There are no rules, Claire. We've been making this up as we go along the whole time. He cupped her face in his hands. But yes. Yes, I'll marry you, whenever you're ready, however you want to do it. Yes. They kissed there in the glow of the Christmas tree lights, sealing a promise that had been building since that rainy night 6 months ago. A promise to show up, to stay, to build something real from the ruins of their separate tragedies. We should probably get an actual ring at some point, Claire said, laughing against his lips. Probably. But for now, this is enough. Christmas morning was chaos in the best way. Noah up at 5:30, Lila confused but excited by all the noise, presents everywhere, and wrapping paper shredded across the floor. They'd gone overboard on gifts, Evan knew they had, but it felt important to celebrate, to mark this first Christmas as a real family. Noah got the massive Lego set he'd been coveting, plus books and art supplies and a new bike for spring. Lila got toys she was too young for but would grow into, plus adorable outfits that Claire immediately started taking pictures of. And Evan and Claire exchanged gifts that were practical but meaningful. A new stethoscope for her, a nice jacket for him, small acknowledgments of their everyday lives. But the best gift was intangible. The feeling of being surrounded by people who loved you, who chose you, who showed up even when things got hard. Evan watched Noah help Lila open a present, watched Claire laugh at something ridiculous, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. This was his life now, not the one he'd planned, not the one he'd lost, but this one. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. Mrs. Henderson came over for Christmas dinner because of course she did. She'd been part of this family longer than Claire had, the steady presence that had held them together when everything was falling apart, and she cried actual tears when Evan announced, with Claire's permission, that they were engaged. "I knew it," Mrs. Henderson declared, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "I knew from that first night. You two were meant to find each other." "You're shameless," Evan said, but he was grinning. "I prefer the term emotionally invested. Now, when's the wedding? I have hats to buy." They hadn't set a date, hadn't made any concrete plans beyond the decision to actually do it. But over the following weeks, they started talking seriously about logistics. Spring wedding, they decided. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Noah as ring bearer because he'd never forgive them if he wasn't included. Lila is the world's youngest flower girl, even though she probably wouldn't actually walk down the aisle so much as be carried. Claire wanted it at Mrs. Henderson's house, in the backyard where they'd had so many family dinners. Evan wanted to write their own vows because traditional promises didn't quite fit their non-traditional circumstances. They compromised on everything, finding middle ground with the ease of people who'd learned how to communicate through necessity. "I can't believe this is real," Claire said one evening in late January, curled up beside Evan on the couch. "Sometimes I still wake up expecting to be at that bus stop." "It's real. We're real. This life is yours now." "Ours," she corrected. "This life is ours." Winter melted into early spring, Portland trading rain for cherry blossoms and longer days. Claire got a promotion at work, shift supervisor with a pay raise that made her cry with relief. Noah turned 8 with a dinosaur-themed party that was exactly as chaotic as expected. Lila started pulling herself up on furniture, preparing for the day she'd walk and destroy everything at toddler height. And through it all, Evan and Claire kept showing up for each other. Through bad days and good days, through stress and joy, through the ordinary struggles of blending a family. They fought sometimes, about discipline, about money, about whose turn it was to do dishes. But they always came back together, always chose each other, always remembered they were on the same team. The wedding was set for May 10th, a Saturday that promised good weather if Portland could be trusted to deliver such things. Evan found himself getting nervous as the date approached, not because he had doubts, but because he wanted everything to be perfect for Claire. She deserved perfect after everything she'd been through. "Stop fussing." "Was, Mrs. Wall," Henderson told him a week before the wedding, catching him rearranging chairs in her backyard for the third time. "Claire doesn't care about perfect, she cares about you." "I know, but I want her to have a day she'll remember. Trust me, honey, she'll remember. Now go home and let me finish decorating. You're underfoot." The night before the wedding, Claire had a small panic attack around midnight. Evan found her in the kitchen, hyperventilating over a glass of water. "What if this is a mistake?" she gasped. "What if we're moving too fast? What if—" "Claire, breathe." He took her hands, grounding her. "Look at me. Do you love me?" "Yes, of course, but do you want to spend your life with me and Noah and Lila?" "Yes, but that's not—" "Then it's not a mistake. It's just scary. There's a difference." He pulled her into a hug, feeling her gradually relax against him. "It's okay to be scared. I'm scared too, but we're doing this anyway because we're brave and stupid and hopelessly in love." She laughed wetly against his shoulder. Brave and stupid. That should be our wedding motto. I'll tell the officiant. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, one of those perfect spring days that Portland occasionally delivered as an apology for all the rain. Evan woke early, checked on Noah, still asleep with the ring box on his nightstand, then went to find Claire. She was already awake, standing at the bedroom window in one of his old t-shirts, watching the sunrise. "Hey," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Good. Really good, actually." She turned to him with a smile. "I'm going to marry you today." "You are. Any regrets?" "Not even one." They spent the morning in controlled chaos, getting ready, keeping Noah from losing the rings, making sure Lila was fed and changed and adorable. Mrs. Henderson had banished them from her backyard until 3 o'clock, insisting she needed time to set up properly. Rebecca arrived around noon to help Claire get ready, their relationship still rebuilding, but solid enough that she'd been asked to be maid of honor. At 2:30, Evan stood in Mrs. Henderson's living room in his best suit, new because Claire had insisted he deserved something that actually fit, trying to tie his tie for the 4th time. Noah appeared beside him, already dressed in his little suit, looking unnervingly grown up. "Dad, are you nervous?" "A little. Are you?" "Yeah. What if I drop the rings?" "Then we pick them up. It's not the end of the world." Evan finally got the tie right. "Noah, I want to ask you something important. Are you okay with this? With me marrying Claire?" Noah thought about it seriously. "Yeah, I think Mom would be okay with it too. And Claire's nice, she makes good pancakes and she doesn't yell too much, and she really loves us." "She really does." "Dad, when you marry Claire, does that make Lila officially my sister?" "Yeah, buddy, officially and forever." "Cool. I always wanted a sister." Noah paused. "Can I call her Mom? Not like instead of Mom, but like also Mom?" Evan felt his throat tighten. "You'll have to ask Claire, but I think she'd love that." At 3 o'clock, Evan stood in Mrs. Henderson's backyard under an arch decorated with flowers, watching the small collection of guests take their seats. Maybe 30 people total. Neighbors, friends from work, a few of Claire's colleagues from the hospital. Jennifer Chen was there, the woman who'd made the initial job connection. Rebecca sat in the front row, holding Lila and looking proud. Mrs. Henderson was crying before the ceremony even started. Music started, something simple on a borrowed speaker, and Noah walked down the makeshift aisle with the rings, taking his job very seriously. Then Rebecca, in a simple blue dress, smiling through her own tears. And then Claire. She was wearing a simple white dress, nothing fancy, just something she'd found at a department store, but she was absolutely radiant. Her hair was down, flowers woven through it. She was carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers, and she was smiling like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. Evan felt tears streaming down his face and didn't bother wiping them away. This was his bride. This woman who'd been a stranger at a bus stop 10 months ago, who'd built a life from nothing, who'd chosen him and Noah and this chaotic, beautiful family. She was walking toward him, and he got to keep her. The ceremony was short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, as planned. Evan went first, his voice shaking but strong. "Claire, 10 months ago I stopped at a bus stop because something told me I had to, and that decision changed everything. You came into my life when I'd forgotten how to really live, and you reminded me what it means to be brave, to take chances, to believe in second chances. You're the best mother to Lila, the best stepmother to Noah, and the best partner I could have asked for. You make me want to be better, do better, love better, and I promise to spend the rest of my life showing up for you the way you've shown up for us. I love you, not because I rescued you, but because you rescued me right back." Claire was crying now, mascara running, not caring at all. She took a shaky breath and began her own vows. "Evan, I was at the lowest point of my life when you stopped. I had nothing, no home, no hope, no idea how I was going to survive the next day. And you gave me everything without asking for anything in return. You gave me shelter and safety and time to heal. But more than that, you gave me a family. You and Noah welcomed Lila and me into your lives like we'd always belonged there. You taught me that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. that families can be built from broken pieces and still be whole, that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. I promise to love you and Noah and this life we've built together. I promise to keep showing up, even when it's hard. I promise to never forget that every day with you is a gift I almost didn't get. I love you so much. The officiant, a friend of Mrs. Henderson's who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this, had to pause to wipe her own eyes before continuing. By the power vested in me by the internet and the state of Oregon, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Evan did, pulling Claire close and kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been underwater. The small crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Noah yelled, "Finally!" which made everyone laugh. Lila started crying, confused by all the noise, which made everyone laugh harder. And just like that, they were married. Officially, legally, permanently. The reception was informal, barbecue and beer, and Mrs. Henderson's famous potato salad. There was no formal dancing, just people mingling in the backyard while Noah chased other kids, and Lila held court in Rebecca's arms. At one point, Evan found himself standing apart from the crowd, just watching it all, the celebration of their weird, wonderful family. Claire found him there, sliding her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "About that bus stop. About how different my life would be if I'd just driven past." "Do you ever wish you had? Driven past, I mean. This has been complicated." "Never. Not once. Not even for a second." He turned to face her fully. "You're my wife now." "I'm your wife," she agreed, testing out the words. "That's so weird. Good weird. But weird. We've been weird from the beginning. Why stop now?" They danced eventually, swaying to music from someone's phone in the middle of the yard while everyone watched and smiled. It wasn't fancy or choreographed. Just two people holding each other, grateful to have found home in the least likely place. Noah came over eventually, tugging on Evan's jacket. "Can I cut in?" "You want to dance with Claire?" Evan asked, surprised. "Yeah, if that's okay." Claire immediately held out her hand to Noah, who took it seriously. They danced, if you could call his awkward shuffling dancing, while Evan watched with a lump in his throat. "Hey, Claire," Noah said after a moment. "Can I call you Mom, like my also mom?" Claire stopped moving, looking down at him with tears streaming down her face again. "Are you sure? You don't have to. I want to. You do all the mom things, and I love you. So yeah, Mom." She knelt down right there in the grass and hugged him tight. "Yes, sweetheart, you can call me Mom. I would be honored." Evan had to turn away, completely overcome. Mrs. Henderson appeared at his elbow with a handkerchief. "You're going to need this." "How did you—" "I've known you for 4 years, Evan Brooks. I know when you're about to lose it." She patted his arm. "This is a good day. One of the best. Sarah would be so happy for you." "You think so?" "I know so. She wanted you to live, remember? Not just survive, but really live. And look at you now, living so hard you're crying at your own wedding." He laughed through the tears. "When did I become such a sap?" "The moment you stopped at that bus stop and decided to be brave." The party went on until evening, until Lila was cranky from too much stimulation and Noah was falling asleep on his feet. They said goodbye to the remaining guests, thanked Mrs. Henderson for everything, and walked the three houses home as the sun set behind Portland's perpetual clouds. Inside their house, their home, Evan and Claire got both kids ready for bed together. Noah in his dinosaur pajamas, Lila in her sleep sack. Two kids who'd been strangers to each other less than a year ago, now siblings in every way that mattered. "Good night, Mom," Noah said to Claire as she tucked him in. The words still clearly felt new in his mouth, but he was smiling. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, buddy," they said in unison. Lila went down easier, tired from the day's excitement. Claire sang to her softly, the same lullaby she'd been singing since the bus stop, since those first terrible days when nothing was certain. But everything was certain now. They had jobs and insurance and a home and each other. They had made it. Finally alone in their bedroom, their shared bedroom, with Claire's things mixed with his and Sarah's memory gently tucked into the corners where it belonged, Evan pulled his wife close. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it. Built a family from nothing. Yeah, we did." Claire looked up at him. Thank you. For what? For stopping. For seeing me. For giving me back my life. Claire, you gave me back mine. This goes both ways. They stood there holding each other while the house settled around them. Their house, their family, their life. Outside, Portland started its inevitable rain, that same rain that had brought them together all those months ago. But inside, they were warm and dry and home. This wasn't the life Evan had planned. It wasn't the life Claire had imagined. But it was theirs, built from tragedy and held together with love and the simple decision to keep showing up for each other day after day after day. And really, wasn't that what every good love story came down to? Not the grand gestures or perfect moments, but the choice to stay, to build something real from broken pieces, to believe that sometimes the worst night of your life could lead to the best beginning. Evan had stopped at a bus stop in the rain and found his future crying in the darkness. He'd taken a chance, made a choice, opened his door and his life to a stranger. And she'd taken a chance right back, trusting a stranger with her daughter, with her heart, with everything she had left. 10 months later, they were married. They were a family. They were home. And every single day, Evan woke up grateful for that rainy Tuesday night when he'd made the decision that changed everything. When he'd chosen to stop instead of driving past. When he'd chosen kindness over convenience, courage over caution, love over fear. Because sometimes, he thought as he held his wife close while rain drummed on the roof above them, sometimes one small choice could save 2 lives at once. Sometimes the person you rescued ended up rescuing you right back. And sometimes, just sometimes, a crying nurse at a bus stop in the rain was exactly what a broken-hearted single father needed to remember how to live again.